Alrighty, I think we are live. Certainly looks like it. Let's get that post in Rev Media. Gonna do the usual, give people time to trickle in before I dive into the cards we've got to talk about. I did the math this time on how many cards there are to talk about. There are 290 cards to sort through. Just a casual 290. Mathematically speaking, that's no different than just doing one full set review in a live stream. Uh, so hey, maybe I should just start doing my set reviews as a 3-hour live stream, except no, it would go so much longer. I'm so sure. I am so absolutely positively sure. Uh, a full set review would go longer than 3 hours. But all that to say, 290 cards to go through. We're just talking about commons that I think have some relevance to the Pauper Eternal format. Relevance is kind of a vague thing. I've kind of just pointed at cards that I think have something going on in the last two streams, and that's going to continue today. I suppose we should lay out the groundwork. So, Revolution Pauper Eternal, for folks who missed the first two streams. The last time we had it, it was Vastum through Awakening in Uldun. Awakening in Uldun was the most recent set when we last did a Pauper Eternal tournament. Cyberos had been announced as the incumbent set during that GP. Since that time, Cyberos has rotated into and out of the format. We've had almost over 2 full years since our last Pauper Eternal tournament. And in that time, we also had the adoption of the 2-set rotations for the summer rotations. So we're in our very first 8-set rotation for Revolution. That was not a thing the last time we did Pauper Eternal. So we have gained 9 sets in the last 2 years. In the first stream, we did Cyberos, Click of the Island, GQ Chaos Reigns, and I very quickly realized this is not a thing I can do in one stream. Yesterday, we did Errors in the Weft, Kitsuo Dusk of Time, Exalted Twill-Tree. Today, we're going to cover the sets that have joined Revolution this calendar year 2026. Solastere, which was our New Year's set, and Innistrad Witching Hour and Valir the Banished Isle, which are the summer sets. So that is what we're going to be doing today. We're going to be covering the commons in those sets, talking about what I think could see some use in Pauper. Excuse me for just a moment. I want to make sure when I'm clearing my throat, I'm not always doing so directly into the microphone. I remembered I can mute my microphone. So yeah, we're going to cover Solastere, Innistrad, and then I have to do the very weird, very tricky thing of talking about my own commons and how good or bad I think they are in this format. I will say, off the top of my head, I'm not too optimistic about my own set. I try to have some things that I felt like could be relevant in Pauper, and certainly I think there are some things in Valir that are relevant for Pauper, but I don't think it's like Errors in the Weft or Exalted Twill-Tree by any measure. So, yeah, we'll get there. It's how we're ending the stream, so. Debating if I want to give it a little bit longer before I dive in, just because I don't want to just, like, roll away without giving people a chance to start rolling in, but also the longer I wait, the longer this is going to go. You know what? Fuck it. This is the nature of this. I've said it in both of the other streams. The nature of this is that the goal is these VODs exist. These are resources that are available. Are they the most coherent resources? No, these are not scripted. If I had the time and patience to script all of these would not have been streams. But here we are. So let's just dive in. Let's dive in. Let's start with Solastere. Let's specifically make sure we're filtering to commons. I don't know why I didn't think to do that before. I think it was just Acolyte of the Beyond being the first card that comes up in terms of set number. Messed with my head a little bit because I said, yes, the common. That means that I'd filtered to commons already. So, let's dive in with Acolyte of the Beyond. Two big things I want to talk about with regards to Solastere in the broad spectrum of things before we dive into specifics. And that is colors and mechanical themes. For colors, Solastere is one of the few sets we have that tries to lean heavier into monocolor support. Some of the ways it does that is through hybrid cost cards, and so those are cards that aren't not necessarily inherently monocolor cards in terms of competitive application. We will get to hybrid cards where we will get to talk about how good they are monocolor versus how good they are multicolor. But we'll also see things like Corporeal Benediction here, where they are like double pipped two-drop spells that, you know, try to help push a monocolor deck a little bit more. I did pay some lip service to the notion of, you know, like mono red or mono blue devotion last stream, specifically with Fork from Errors in the Weft. We'll see if there's anything here that might lend credence to a devotion deck of any capacity. But monocolored decks are the goal with Solastere was to try and bolster monocolored a little bit. That might impact some of the cards in Pauper, but if they are good enough to see play, they will see play outside of monocolor, most likely, unless they are like hinging on monocolor as the way that they function. Second is mechanical themes. This set has a lot of relevant mechanical themes for Pauper. We have a lot of -1/-1 counter support between Vastoom and Karslav. Those sets, their -1/-1 counter support is not necessarily the most inherently broken stuff of all time in Pauper, but it is there. And Solastere has -1/-1 counter support as well. It is the only one of these three sets to properly have Wither, which is notable. We have chart tokens, which I kind of talked down during the set review. I was not super optimistic about chart tokens. I'm still not crazy about them, but I have started to slowly gain more appreciation for them over time. But that's relevant for trinket token synergies, which, of course, artifact tokens, we will always have relevant trinket token synergies, but especially as we talked about in the first of these three streams, there are a couple white Cyber Soul cards in particular that I think have some real merit behind them, so that might be relevant. Syzygy, which is Convoke, but only for generic costs, but also for the activated abilities of cards with Syzygy. Not a mechanic that has seen a ton of use in Constructed, necessarily. I do think there is more to like about Syzygy in Pauper, where it allows you to have access to larger threats as a lower curve strategy, and get larger threats for cheaper, especially. So Syzygy, also I think very relevant in Pauper. And adventures. I think our adventure spells, much more few and far between, but they do still exist. And I do still think that they could do some very good things in Pauper. So, lots to like about Solastere from a mechanical aspect, lots of interesting things from a color aspect. Let's not waste any more time. We'll start with Acolyte of the Beyond, which immediately slots into that trinket token conversation. It is one of a handful of different white 1-drops we have access to, with on enter, make its relevant artifact token. In this case, it is a 1/1 with lifelink that makes a chart token on enter. The lifelink can be decently nice here and there. Not too often that this is going to trade off with like an aggro creature necessarily, but even if this is just chump blocking an aggro creature, the 1 point of life gain might be nice on occasion. The chart token is the reason you are playing this in almost every circumstance. Being able to make those chart tokens, both as just like, you know, artifacts that you can have around for things like your Cyber Soul costs, or to have in play for Hushed Briefing, I believe it is. Let me just double check Hushed Briefing. I think it's Hushed Briefing. Yeah, for Hushed Briefing, having the tokens in play for that purpose as well can be very nice. So, Acolyte of the Beyond, definitely a solid role player in that regard. I do not think it is astonishing by any measure. as far as our token makers at 1 go, I think the best of them will remain Nordhaven Hawk. Glyph tokens just super cheap to activate overall. The real boon for Nordhaven Hawk is just 1 mana 1/1 flyer with the trinket token creation. If there are any ways in trinket decks to buff up your other creatures, which Stellian Evangel gets to put +1/+1 counters on your things. I talked about, Stellian Evangel, it's 2 and a white. You can flip it for 4 artifacts being tapped and a white to become a, excuse me, become a 2/3 lifelinker that gets to have distributed 2 +1/+1 counters across things for 4 mana total. And while, yes, that is a 4 mana 4/5 lifelinker, very relevant very relevant stat line for the format, it is also true that it could be a 4 mana 2/3 lifelinker that makes your Nordhaven Hawk a 3/3 flyer, which is very, very nice, very, very real. And I do think, credit to Acolyte of the Beyond works very nicely with Stellian Evangel in the same regard, because one of the best things you can do with a lifelink creature is make it stronger. So yeah, I don't think Acolyte of the Beyond is going to define the format like some of the other common creatures we've talked about. Certainly, as far as things that enter and make a token in this format, it is not. It is no download carrier. It is no mnemologist. But I do think it could be a very solid role player in a deck that might look for something like this effect. Corporeal Benediction is weird. We do have a handful of scattered heroic payoffs. They are mostly in red, as I recall. It is double white instant. Up to 2 target creatures get +2/+1 until end of turn. It's a pretty good combat trick overall. This is 2 mana, push 4 damage if both creatures are going unblocked. This can be a 2-for-1 to turn 2 trades in combat into 2 profitable blocks for you as the attacker, as the aggressor, or as the defender. This can be used on offense or defense. So certainly the ability to have this flip around into a favorable board state one way or another is there. I am not too optimistic about Corporeal Benediction, though, so me personally, I do not see it getting a ton of play. Existential Eclipse. I'm not optimistic about this one. I don't think it's particularly relevant, unfortunately, so we're going to move on. Helia Eulogist. I did talk about this a little bit in the last stream. 2 mana 1/3. When it enters, you draw a card. If your life total is above your starting life total, otherwise you gain 3 life. Now, this is something that is really fighting for the 2 mana cantripping creature slot. This is much more reliable at making sure you are sitting at a comfortable life total, because only when you are at 21 or more life is this going to be cantripping when it enters. Otherwise, it is just a 2 mana 1/3 that healing salves you. But in a bounce deck, in a flicker deck that is looking to have its early creatures help them stabilize and then repeatedly use their enter triggers for value later on, this is something that will eventually convert to value, and until it converts to value, its job is making sure that red doesn't slaughter you. And red in this field is built to slaughter you. So Helia Eulogist being able to put you at a more comfortable life total, 3 toughness is kind of a pain for red decks where some of their better cheap threats are 2 power. That is very nice. That is a very reliable thing that Helia Eulogist can serve to do, and can really help you feel a little bit safer against those aggro matchups, while still having relevant text, a relevant role to play in mid-range matchups. I really like Helia Eulogist here. I have been kind of disappointed by it in, proper constructed standard, but I do think in this commons-only field, I like it a lot more. Lackey Fey Light Warden is one of many, many, many creatures that is going to be putting a -1/-1 counter on a creature you control. It's a 4 mana 3/4 lifelinker. I do not think that would be necessarily playable even if it did not do anything on enter. However, it does require you to debuff one of your creatures on enter. I mentioned that I like Stellian Evangel as a 4 mana 2/3 lifelinker that gets to distribute 2 +1/+1 counters. This is a 4 mana 2/3 lifelinker unless you want to kill one of your other things or reduce one of your other things, in which case it's a 3/4 that hurts your stats elsewhere. There are -1/-1 counter removal synergies in this set to be aware of. This is not a meaningful way to help those pay off. Moonscarred Pilgrim, 2-mana 2/2 with Wither. Whenever one or more counters, whenever you put one or more counters on a permanent, you surveil one. I don't think it's that great. Wither is certainly nice. It allows you to have real play into larger creatures more reliably, just because when you like have to chump block with your 2-drop in the face of something like a Colossus of Trax, that 5/5 winds up as a 3/3 on subsequent turns, where it's a lot more manageable. Moonscarred Pilgrim can certainly help you against like that. It can help against like Torpid Colossus. So certainly Moonscarred Pilgrim has some very relevant text in and plays a very relevant role in that regard. But like, I don't think you want to reach for a 2/2 for 2 just because it's got Wither. And I don't think the Surveil 1 ability is all that great as a like bonus incentive. I'm not super optimistic about it. Sarsupe Houndmaster is one of those payoffs for putting -1/-1 counters on your creatures. It is a 3-mana 3/3, but it puts a -1/-1 counter on a creature you control when it enters. You can pay 2 mana and remove a -1/-1 counter from it as a sorcery to make a 2/2 black dog creature token. I don't think this is one of the better payouts by any means. This is functionally 5 mana for a 3/3 and a 2/2. And then in future turns, like, you can find ways to put more -1/-1 counters on it for more value. I don't think that matters too much. I'm not too confident in it really getting room to do much, but certainly if you are leaning in on -1/-1 counter synergies, you could do worse. So, Star-Touched Stalwart is yet another one of these -1/-1 counter granters to 5 mana 5/5, but it puts a -1/-1 counter on one of your things. You can pay a white and remove a counter from it to return an artifact or enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand. One interesting thing, and I believe we will be getting to it in a moment, is that we do have a white aura that whenever a creature attacks or blocks the enchanted creature, or when the aura enters, the enchanted creature gets a -1/-1 counter. I think something like this specifically, where it is a very cheap activation, if you can repeatedly put -1/-1 counters on it, and take those counters off before like combat damage actually matters, because this can be activated at instant speed, that could be a very real engine. Now, do you want to spend 5 mana for the engine piece and then have to spend a 6th mana and a second card for that engine to actually come online? Probably not. Probably not, for sure. But it's something to be aware of. So I'm not super optimistic about Star-Touched Stalwart, but I do think it's a better payout than Starsupe Houndmaster. We do have a lot of very relevant artifacts and enchantments in the format, especially ones that find themselves going to the graveyard very reliably, so that could be something worth trying. In fact, I'm going to skip a couple cards and get to Tireless Pilgrimage, because I think it hinges on those -1/-1 counter synergies for the most part. It is enchant creature, attacks when it enters, or the enchanted creature attacks or blocks, you put a -1/-1 counter on an enchanted creature. This deals with opposing creatures pretty reliably. This is functionally White's deadweight, because it does something very similar to deadweight. If their creature wants to attack or block, it is going to get a second -1/-1 counter, which means that that creature is going to explode. For lack of a better word, it is going to fizzle out of existence. This is very particularly mean against experience, where this just actively negates the experience ability of the creature attacking, getting a +1/+1 counter, and then Tireless Pilgrimage gets rid of the +1/+1 counter. Is very funny. I think this is best used when you are leaning on the synergy aspect, where you're putting this in a deck that wants to put -1/-1 counters on its own things, and then can use this as an engine piece. But the fact that this can be removal as well is very nice. And so this is going to be relevant when we talk about a lot of these -1/-1 counter synergy tools, like the Star-Touched Stalwart. And certainly, again, returning artifacts and enchantments is a very nice payout for a single white each time it attacks or blocks, and once guaranteed when the Tireless Pilgrimage comes in on it. Stardust Behemoth is our first Syzygy creature, and already it's a very good one in my opinion. It is 4 and double white for a 4/4 elemental soldier. You can pay 3 and a white and make a 1/1 black elemental creature token with this creature can't block or be tapped for Syzygy. Important for this is that that ability can be activated at instant speed, so in a gummed up board, you can leave all of your creatures capable of blocking up as blockers, and then just start tapping your other creatures to pay for this activated ability. And realistically, after the first time you activate it, this ability costs 2 and a white for the... Oh, not 2 and a white, because the creatures can't be tapped for Syzygy. I was just about to go on a diatribe that would have been entirely wrong. Nope, still costs 3 and a white no matter what. The tokens can't be tapped for Syzygy abilities. But I still think Stardust Behemoth looks very good in a tokens deck. Having the ability to just drop a 4/4 for 2 is very, very nice in a white tokens deck. And we do have a lot of very good token creation effects in white to get this out into play for cheap pretty reliably. Starlit Sanctuary is a single mana enchantment that makes a chart token on enter, and whenever a land you control enters, you gain 1 life. It's a pretty meager landfall ability, but it might be relevant in like mono red matchups where every point of life matters. Just being able to sort of passively gain life and just have something that like helps you hit your next land drop is nice. Certainly, if this is your turn 1 play and your turn 2 play is cracking a chart token, you're not looking super great against mono red. But I think if you're leaning into artifact synergies, the chart token looks a lot better. I don't know if decks that are looking for like the trinket token synergies would want this as a sideboard tool necessarily, but it's not nothing. We've already spoken about Tireless Pilgrimage, so we can move on to Tyrellian Ley Pillar. One of the archetype mechanical themes that I forgot about, and I ought to give some respect to, is that this set also has Defender themes. Yet another thing it overlaps with Karslav on outside of the -1/-1 counters. Each of the colors has one Defender that has a spell ability when it enters, and then we have the best of the Defenders in colorless. Tyrellian Ley Pillar's 4 mana 0/4 Defender. It makes 2 1/1 Jellyfish Flyers when it enters. I think this is one of the worst Ley Pillars. I don't see it seeing a ton of play in Pauper, but it's not terrible. Twilight Legion is our other white Syzygy card. 2 and a white for a 2/2. You can pay 2 and a white and tap it, and again, you can tap other creatures besides itself for both its casting cost and its Syzygy cost, and its activated ability cost, rather. To search your library for another Twilight Legion, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. I don't think it's as good as the other Syzygy common in white. I don't think it's as good by any means, but this can be a 1 mana 2/2 if you have 2 other creatures to tap, so it's not terrible by any means. I'm not super optimistic about it, though. Architect of Ascension is another Syzygy card. We're in blue, and we're already talking about Syzygy again. It's a 6 mana 3/6 with Syzygy. For 2 and a blue, it gains flying and vigilance until end of turn. I think this is actually pretty solid. 6 toughness is a I'm trying to find a way to not swear about this. It is a lot of toughness. It is a very, very solid stat line. If you can get this down for 2 mana, that is an important if, of course, not one that is negligible by any means, but if you can get 4 creatures in play as a blue deck, this is a 2 mana 3/6, and then I think you are fine even just paying full cost on that activated ability for the ability for this to push damage while still sitting in the back, holding down the fort, making sure your opponent is not safe to swing in. In combat, this thing only 1-for-1 trades with Death Touchers, pretty much. Again, like, I think Syzygy looks really good in Pauper, where it lets you get these 6 mana creatures down for cheap, hold up mana for other things alongside them, and you get really solid stat lines overall. Where this is a card that I wouldn't even like deign to consider for proper constructed in Pauper. This looks really good. Celestial Insight is probably not that important. It's a 4 mana draw 2 at instant speed. You make a 1/1 spirit without flying. I'm not too optimistic about this one. Unfortunate. Chart the Cosmos is a solid cantrip, but it's got a ton of competition. Single blue sorcery, you draw a card, make a chart. This has actually done some very solid work in Constructed, by my experience. Certainly is a very reasonable cantrip, especially for more control decks. Being able to find a chart in control decks where you want to be hitting your land drops, it's very nice. Charts are also very good in control decks where you're holding up mana for counter magic. In turns where you don't want to spend mana on counter magic, being able to crack a chart instead is very, very nice to be able to continue hitting your land drops. If control exists in Pauper, I could see this slotting into control decks, but I don't know how optimistic I am about that, and I don't know if this is the cantrip that control truly wants to reach for by any measure. Cursory Glance, we don't really need to spend time on. It is already in the format before Solastere joined, and it is a very good counterspell. Dream Snare is our double-pipped spell in blue. It is an unsummon, only bounces creatures, not any permanent type. And if its mana value is 3 or less, you draw a card. I think the big death knell for this is just that it only targets creatures. So because this cannot bounce like a read token, can't bounce a subroutine token while drawing you a card, that's, I think, just a bit too unfortunate. I don't think Dream Snare gets there necessarily. I think Forced Ejection just looks better in almost every case. Yes, this is reliably drawing you a card without you needing to double spell, but it is a more restrictive mana cost, and it only hits creatures. So I think that is just a bummer for Dream Snare here. Grasp of Oblivion is good blue removal, something we do not get a ton of. Single blue flash enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets -3 power, and its activated abilities can't be activated. This having flash is a big deal. This kind of just shutting off a creature, reducing it to its toughness in almost every circumstance is a big deal. This is not good at creatures that self-grow because those are usually based on triggered abilities, which this does not disable. But any creatures who are being used more for their raw stats or for, like the thing that they're primarily there for, like this is like an anti-red card for blue, and blue does not get many of those in this format. So we'll take what we can get. Something that reduces a Renegade Apprentice to being a 0/1 or a 0/2 with first strike is pretty nice. And the fact that you can do that at instant speed, also very nice. Humbled Invoker, probably not that good. 4 mana 1/1 with flash, enters, you make a 3/2. 4 mana is a bit much for that. Moonscarred Mystic is one of our -1/-1 counter payoffs in blue. It's a 1 mana 2/2 that puts a -1/-1 counter on one of your things, so it's usually up 1/1. You can pay 1 into blue and tap it and remove a -1/-1 counter from Moonscarred Mystic to draw a card. So this begs the question, how are we reliably getting -1/-1 counters on this to draw cards consistently? And more problematically, how in any way will that ever compete with Nemologist? Because functionally, you have to spend 3 mana for this to draw you 1 card, and then you get a 2/2, and it's a 1/1 before you can draw the card. You do have to wait a turn to draw a card with this. You have to wait a turn to draw a card with Nemologist, and then afterwards, you don't have to spend any more mana on Nemologist. You draw another card every 3 turns. You have to put a lot more work in, a lot more synergy tools for Moonscarred Mystic to draw you more cards, and in the process, you also have to pay 2 mana for each one of those cards you want to draw, but you could get one every turn. I don't think it's all that good, unfortunately. Karaz Doomsayer is our other blue Syzygy card. 2 in a blue for a 1/4 with 1 in a blue tap target creature. I think this is the most disposable of our Syzygy cards so far. 1/4 is not a bad stat line by any measure. 1 mana 1/4 is very nice. But ultimately, I don't think it does enough relevant things beyond the stat line. And I think the stat line is not so amazing that this is worth the trouble for the stat line. So Karaz Doomsayer is something we can just move on from. Karaz Nullblade is actually not too shabby. I think there's just one big issue with it, which is that there is actual competition for this 2 mana. What's the... Oh no, it's gonna bother me now. The 3 mana 2/2 cat that is classically the thing that does this. That's gonna bother me. All right, well, these like 2-mana creatures that enter and stun a creature you don't control. This is a very good one. 2-mana 1/3 that does that is very, very solid. Unfortunately, we have something that might just be better in that particular role. It can't attack. It's not a 1/3, it's a 0/4. Let's see. It's Wall of Heroes. It does the exact same thing, except it's a 0/4 wall with Defender. I mentioned that Solastere gives us some walls to help bolster Defender. Defender looks to be a very real like combo strategy in Pauper, and that is a strategy that hinges on green and blue, in which case, you know, Wall of Heroes is going to be a pretty easy Defender to slot into those decks. And it is a very solid role player. Kara's Nullblade has no such synergies outside of, I guess it's Rogue. It's a Rogue, but I don't think the Valir Rogue payoffs at common are all that good for Pauper. So, unfortunately, I don't think Kara's Nullblade quite gets there. But it's a very solid card overall, I think. Slumber Zoa, out here with the Storm Jelly art. 2-mana 1/2, Flying Vigilance, taps to add a blue only if it's not your turn. I don't think it matters, unfortunately, but it's not a terrible mana dork. Making blue for your instants and your spells with flash and your activated abilities is nice. I just don't think it's good enough. Unveil. We have other counter unless its controller pays X counter spells that I think are just a little bit better, but making a chart is nice. Zymoth Laypillar is 5 mana for a 0/4 Defender. When it enters, you get to tuck a non-land permanent. Gets put on the top or bottom of its owner's library. You believe a bit in Slumber Zoa, very relevant body. No, it's not. Storm Jelly's got +1/+1 on this thing. This loses to Storm Jelly every time. I will say 1/2 flyer with Vigilance is pretty nice. I will lambast the Stormcrow stat line, but Vigilance does do quite a lot. Blocks the 1/1 flyers for days, and again, you know, tapping for mana on top of that is nice. How could anyone beat Storm Jelly? Exactly. Like, yes, it's got solid stats. Storm Jelly just beats it every day. Dies to Doomblade, Lee. Come on. Zymoth Laypillar. I think this is the least playable of the walls. Of the Laypillars, I think the thing that gives it so much more room to be used, despite that, is just that, again, the Defender's deck is primarily blue and green, and as a result, because it is a primarily blue and green deck, and is a blue and green deck with a Defender's Matter tutor, this gets to, I think, still be a 1 or 2 of in those 75s, despite, I think, this being the worst of the 5, like, monocolor walls, just off the basis of it being something that you can grab as a silver bullet. Moving on to black, Abyssal Retriever is a pretty solid common. 5 mana 3/3 dog. When it enters, you exile up to 1 creature, enchantment, or planeswalker and lose life equal to its mana value. Exile instead of destroy is very, very nice. We have talked a bit about how low curve a lot of this format is, which means this is often not going to be dinging you for a ton of life. This is just enters. If you got flicker effects, this could be something you reuse, though I don't think you want to bleed yourself dry in the process. Yeah, I think Abyssal Retriever does look very good. Its 3/3 stat line on top of this enter trigger is very nice. You're it's forced shutdown, I believe, right? It's a 3 mana 3/3 that casts forced shutdown on enter effectively. But it's better than forced shutdown because it exiles instead of destroying, so it does not fire off death triggers, and it does not engage in other synergies in that regard. Like, this doesn't enable graveyard synergies for the opponent. I think this is very good. It's an up to as well. You're never forced to use this effect. Yeah, I think this is about as good of a Chupacabra, as good of a Necrotal as we could ask for in Pauper, I think. Caress of the Stars is not going to see play, I think, and you can blame Fashion Temples from Flesh. They are the exact same breakpoint, 2 mana, -2/-2 to a creature. This makes a chart token and does so at instant speed, but Fashion Temples makes you a 1/1 at sorcery speed, and then also gets to be recast from the graveyard later. I think that is a better way to spend some extra mana than a chart token, and I don't think instant speed makes up for making a 1/1. The best thing that Caress of the Stars has going for it is just that debuff is permanent, so if you're doing it to something with more than 2 toughness, it is going to wear those -1/-1 counters forever. So this is a better way to check larger creatures. I do not think it's the right way to check larger creatures, unfortunately. Discordant Voidling is a 1 mana 1/1. Can't block creatures with mana value 7 or greater, so blocks almost everything in the format. And you can pay 1 and a black and return it from your graveyard to your hand. We have some looter synergies, and we don't have many things at common that return themselves from your graveyard to your hand repeatedly. So this can kind of slot into looters as a way to turn your looting effects into card advantage. You do have to spend 1 and a black to do so every single time, which kind of stinks. But that's not nothing. And again, like, this does block just about anything in the format because mana value 7 or greater, there are not many 7-drops running around in the format. Certainly not many that are getting cast for real. There are some, like, reanimation threats that might be coming in that are 7-drops, but I think by the time Reanimator's getting their 7-drops back, I don't think you care that Voidling can't block. So, yeah. I think Voidling actually looks pretty solid. Also very relevant for Aristocrats. Just something that you can keep sacrificing and replaying and sacrificing and replaying. Unfortunately, we don't have many sacrifice outlets, or really any sacrifice outlets, especially at common, that can keep spitting out mana as a reward for sacrificing things. So this isn't something that could be used for a combo by any means, but certainly, if we ever got a Phyrexian Altar-like effect, I would be dying to put Discordant Voidling alongside that. So, yeah, I kind of like it. Just not gonna be the like thing that wins games. An Inexorable Shepherd is the first 6-mana City creature I don't like. It's a 6-mana 4/3, which is a lot of why I don't like it. 3 toughness is a bit awkward. You can pay 3 and a black and have it gain indestructible until end of turn and tap it. I don't love that because I think where it ultimately leaves you is that you need to be comfortable leaving up enough mana to protect it the turn you play it, which means you need to be a very wide board to be able to run this out and still have enough untapped creatures and mana available to make it indestructible. And that stings. I think it's just too much to make it a reliable creature on board. Lightless Diviner, however, I think is pretty neat. 3 and a black for a 2/4. Very solid stat line for the number of creatures you'd have to tap. Even just, tapping 2 creatures, get this as a 2-mana 2/4. That is pretty nice. You can pay 5 and a black and tap it at any time at instant speed to draw a card and lose 1 life. Of course, tapping creatures to reduce that 5 down to as little as 0. So single mana tap, draw a card, lose 1 life. Very nice. Easily just sort of uses some of the creatures you might have lying around. I think Lightless Diviner looks sweet. I don't know where this would want to slot into necessarily, so I do think that is a very awkward issue for Lightless Diviner, but it is a draw engine at common, and it is one that gets to come down potentially as a very well-statted, low-cost creature. So that is pretty nice. Mantle of Dusk is not one of the edicts that looks quite as good as some of the others. 2 mana aura enchants a creature you control. Each opponent sacrifices a creature. When an enchanted creature dies, you return that card to its owner's hand. This is competing with Gravelet Meditation and Omen of Slaughter. Omen of Slaughter gets to be at instant speed. Doesn't rebuy your creature by any means, but does just make the opponent sacrifice a creature. And you can sacrifice it to scry. Gravelet Meditation does require you to sacrifice something if you want your opponent to sacrifice something, but it still lets your opponent sacrifice something if your board is empty. And it gets to return any creature from your graveyard to your hand rather than Mantle requiring you to have the creature you want to get back already in play. I think ultimately Gravelet Meditation and Omen collectively push this out of contention. Those are just two very good 2-mana edicts that are also enchantments, so they work with flicker synergies. They work with other enchantment synergies. This is something that I think just kind of hurts Mantle too much. March of the Long Night is good. It's very good. Double black, sorcery, return target creature card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Gains death, touch, and haste until end of turn. I would like to introduce you to my favorite common, or one of my favorite commons. I believe it is Void Touched. Nope, not Void Touched. What the... I can't believe I'm forgetting the name of the thing. I got it. Void Mist. I knew it was Void something. Void Mist Prodigy. 2-mana 1/1 Death Toucher. When it enters, you may sacrifice a creature. When you do, target opponent loses 3 life and you gain 3 life. So, with something like March of the Long Night, Void Mist Prodigy allows you to turn all of these effects into 2 mana, deal 3 to the opponent, you gain 3 life. I really like the ability to have access to an effect like that. Fake fan of Void Mist. I'm not a fake fan of Void Mist. I've played that shit in REV Eternal. I have not won a tournament with it, but I am a fan of Void Mist more than most. Do not come at me, Lee. You know I put in the work. You know I have put in the reps with this card. Look at this shit. Look at this shit. Look at my name on here. I'm in there. 4-1. 4-1. I only that loss I believe was yeah, that loss was top cut. That loss was top cut. I was undefeated. I do remember that tournament, and I do remember why that loss was that in top cut. I do remember that it was because both of my matchups against the combo deck of the tournament just wound up being very strange like audibles where I didn't actually have to play the matchup, and then I finally did have to play the matchup in the proper top cut and got my ass handed to me. But hey, I went undefeated in Swiss with it. And look, April of 2024. That was the last Pauper GP. Notice how many other people registered in April of 2024? I earned my fucking flowers with this card. I played it in Pauper. I know what I'm about. I know what I'm talking. And it's 3-1 because I was able to negotiate a intentional draw in round 4 of Swiss. So I was undefeated in Pauper with that card as well, until I had to go against Cool Beans in Mono Red, and I got stomped into the curb again. And I will never forget that Renegade Apprentice gains first strike. So anyways, March of the Long Night, Unearth effects are very good. We have some very, very good 3-drops in the format. We have some 3-drops that have classically seen a lot of play in proper constructed with Unearths. Look no further than Skophos Conqueror being in the format. That is one of the things that most appreciates having access to Unearths, where this can just be like a 2-mana 4/3 that draws a card, domes the opponent for 2, and then because of how March of the Long Night works, it then gets to swing in immediately and kill just about anything that blocks it. This pairing of cards also really appreciates the fact that we have looters in the format, which is very nice. Skophos Conqueror, Ignited Soul, and an Unearth effect are pretty much just like a classic classic trio of effects at this point. I think, at least in my mind, they're a very classic trio of effects. And so March of the Long Night, I think, is something that will be a strategy-defining card. Though it's not alone. It's not the only black Unearth we'll talk about in this stream, which is really awesome because I don't believe Pauper had any Unearths in black prior to this year. This is one of those moments where I get to say I'm doing my part, and we'll talk about the other one in the Valir portion of this stream. Nether Ponderings is one half of one of the most infamous rares in the format. It is one half of Keening Bell Tower, one of the most format-defining, and I don't mean of its rotations, full format-defining cards. I think Keening Bell Tower is one of the most iconic Revolution cards in the format's history. And Nether Ponderings is the win condition half of that card. It is the when you draw a card, your opponent loses life and you gain life. Unfortunately, there are some things that are going against it. First off, it's 3 and a black. It's not 4 generic, so you can't play it in any colors. You have to at least be in black. Other problem is that it does not draw you cards in any capacity, unlike Keening Bell Tower. One of the things that makes Bell Tower so good is that it draws you cards, and Nether Ponderings cannot make such a claim. The biggest problem with Nether Ponderings is that people are going to be packed to the gills with enchantment removal because enchantments are so damn good, and Nether Pondering suffers a lot because if you get it removed before you ever draw a card, you spent 4 mana to make your opponent discard a removal spell for an enchantment. That doesn't feel so good. I do think it's good. I do think it's okay, like it's solid. If it comes on, like this is something that does kind of demand answering because it will start to bury your opponent over time, puts you further and further out of reach, puts your opponent closer to dead. It is one of those things that is really glad Nemologist is as busted as it is. It is one of those things where it's like you will play this in a Nemologist deck because Nemologist is so powerful and gives you so many draws to trigger Nether Ponderings. I don't think you will put this into a Nemologist deck because, like, Nemologist needs Nether Ponderings. But I do think you will be playing at least blue and black when you're playing Nether Ponderings because I don't think you ever register a single copy of this card without at least having a playset of Nemologists in the list already. Oblivion Surveyor, I am a big fan of, actually. 2 mana 2/2, when it enters, each player discards a card. If you discarded a card this way, create a chart token. So if your hand's empty after you cast this, you don't discard anything, but you don't make a chart. If you do have something to discard, such as something you might have wanted to discard, this gets you a chart, so you can keep hitting your land drops. I think this is a very solid enabler for Reanimator effects. Granted, a lot of the best reanimation threats in the format do self-discard, so that can be a bit awkward for Oblivion Surveyor's role in those kinds of strategies, but this can also just be nice to apply pressure to your opponent's hand while getting a little bit of compensation in the process. I could see this being something that gets play in like a white-black trinket tokens deck, because this is something that makes a trinket token to help pay for like Cyber Soul costs while, you know, hindering your opponent's resources, which is very nice. If we're going to talk about common creatures in this set that hinder opponent's resources, let's talk about Femoros Laypillar. 2 and a black, wall with Defender. It's a 1/3. When it enters, if you cast it, target player reveals their hand. You may choose a non-land card from it. If you do, that player discards that card. These sorts of 3 mana take a card effects are not always all that good, but a 1/3 that gets to do that is significantly better. Getting a version of this effect where it also blocks is very nice. It is already filtered out of being bullshit because it has an if you cast rider, so no flickering this to be evil and draw step block your opponent. Yeah, I think it's fine. I think it'll be all right. I don't think it's going to be as strong in Pauper as it would be in rotation, and I don't think it's seen a ton of play in rotation, so that might not bode well for it. But if the Defender's deck is looking for hand attack, this might be a very real way for Defenders to get access to hand attack. And that might be something that shores up the Defender's mirrors. Relentless Huntmaster is another one of these cheap, another one of these like low-statted creatures that makes a better token. It's a 1/1 with Wither that makes a 2/2 dog without Wither. Don't think it's playable. Move on. Sarsape Allseer. 2 mana 2/1 with Lifelink. You can pay 3 and exile it from your graveyard, draw a card, and lose 1 life. I don't think that's going to be relevant. Twilight Ambush, we can skip because it was already at common and already in the format, but I will just note that this is one of our best 1-mana removal spells in the format. There are a lot of creatures that are power or toughness 2 or less. So this does remove a lot of things, and a lot of threats wind up trying to push above 2 toughness, in part because of Twilight Ambush. They try to push above 2/2 stats overall because of Twilight Ambush. It's not just Twilight Ambush that is pressuring things away from wanting to be 2 toughness. Of course, we have said enough about Fashion Temple's Flesh. So Twilight Ambush in that regard does kind of suffer for that card's infamy at this point. But, you know, even if something has 3 toughness, it doesn't mean it has 3 or more power. So Twilight Ambush can still kill things that Fashion Temples might not be able to. Aberrant Whispers. 4 mana for a threaten that could also just be 1 to each opponent and each creature in Planeswalker your opponent's control. This is a modal spell with 2 modes that you don't really want to spend 4 mana for. Moving on. Carousel Valiant is 1 mana for a 1/1 with Wither. When it dies, you create a chart token. This is kind of in a weird spot where it is something that reads like an effect Aristocrats might care for, but I don't think... I think Aristocrats has enough good red 1-drops in this format. We have 3 different red 1-drops that make treasures when they die. I don't think you're reaching for the one that makes chart tokens, unfortunately. Comet Conduit is 4 mana for a 1/4 with Reach and Syzygy, so it's really sometimes 2 mana or 1 mana for a 1/4. You can pay 2 and a red and tap it to make a tapped treasure token. It is the word tapped in that token creation that I think kills this for me. It is so close to being something that I might genuinely have some faith in being able to do even something even remotely interesting, but the token being made tapped is just such a bummer. Cosmic Bounty is 2 and a red for an instant. It's another, discard a card, draw 2. This makes a treasure token. We have a cost reducer or 2 at common for these kinds of spells. I've said it, I think I said it yesterday, that I want to be a believer that there is some sort of storm something or another that we can do in this format, and we just haven't really figured out the right payoffs. But this could be a part of that engine. Just filter out lands for more spells, more action, draw make a treasure in the process, refund some mana, and because this is 2 and a red to do so, if you can discount this by 2, this is essentially 1 mana, bank the mana that you spent on this, filter cards out of your hand for better cards. Which is very, very nice. I do like Cosmic Bounty quite a bit. Essence Ignition is double red for an aura with enchanted creature gets +2/+1 and has menace. When it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, draw a card. So we talked yesterday about the elephant in the room, and I'm blanking. I am not blanking on the name. I'm blanking on the name. I typed in Faces of the Faceless. Face of Animosity. I did remember the name. Face of Animosity. So we talked about the elephant in the room, which is that Face of Animosity is such a good red pump spell. Don't think it's the only thing that's buffing up your red creature stats that you want to be reaching for, because Essence Ignition is so good in mono red. This lets your, the curve of Renegade Apprentice on 1, swing for 1 because you can, into turn 2, Essence Ignition, swing for 4 with First Strike and Menace, and if they remove your Renegade Apprentice, you draw a new card, is really good. This thing makes your threats in mono red so much more annoying to get off the board through combat, lets them push for more damage more reliably, and if they do find a way to pick off your creature, whether it is through removal or through double blocking, you then get a card in the process to continue pushing damage because you're getting more cards out of your deck and into your hand. I really like Essence Ignition. I think it deserves to be tried. I know for a fact that the +2 power and menace for 2 mana as an aura is something we have seen get played before in Eternal in general. Let's just take a look here for a moment, because we need to talk about how Embraced by Dusk is this exact same thing, and how it has seen play. It saw real, PTM put some real work behind this, and I think for good reason, because this card is very good. And Embraced by Dusk is 1 and a black, as opposed to double red, but for mono red, that is actually easier to cast than splashing black for Embraced by Dusk. And my understanding is PTM was usually splashing black for this card. Now you don't need to splash black, you can just have red mana to get it. And it cantrips if it's put into the graveyard from the battlefield. It's so good. Anyways, Frenetic Astronomer is another thing that I have found myself thinking about a bit. It is 2 and a red for a 2/2 human wizard. When it enters, you add double red and create a chart token. If you can flicker this, that means you get to keep adding red mana and keep making charts. In the worst case scenario, you have a way to spend the red mana immediately by hitting by getting lands to continue hitting land drops. A little weird for me that this is kind of 3 mana 2/2 draw your next land in red of all colors. But, the set has a token. It's going to use that token. I kind of get it. The thing is just that, this is a creature that makes mana when it enters, so if you can repeatedly have it enter, that is more mana for, potential combo nonsense. Unfortunately, I don't think that combo nonsense really exists, but it is something to keep in mind that it exists. Horizon Blotter is another one of those Syzygy 6-drops. It's 4 and double red for a 5/4. With 2 and a red, target creature can't block this turn. Activate only as a sorcery. With enough mana or enough creatures that you can tap for Syzygy, this can just disable your opponent's important creatures from being able to block, or disable all of your opponent's irrelevant creatures from being able to block, so they're put in a position of having to choose taking 5 or blocking with their single best creature. And probably not trading in the process. I really like Horizon Blotter. I think this is one of the better Syzygy commons. This thing does just kind of take over the board. It is also... I talked a bit about this yesterday. We will get to talk about it a bit more today. Mana value 4 or greater creature, mana value 4 or greater spells that can be cost reduced are very nice, especially in red and green. So that's another nice thing going for Horizon Blotter. Malignant Moonbeam is something we do actually really need to give some credit to. X and a red deals X damage to target creature or planeswalker, and then the line that makes this a combo kill. Excess damage is dealt to that permanent's controller instead. We have 2 different big mana decks that can go infinite in terms of mana generation. We have Monument to the 30 decks, and we have Defender's combo. Both of those decks can inevitably produce infinite mana. Both of those decks are then looking for infinite mana outlets. Malignant Moonbeam is one of 2 X spells in the format that can provide that. I do think it is the worst of the 2. We have one in black that is choose one between target creature gets -X/-X and target player mills X cards. That is ultimately the better of those win conditions because it does not require your opponent to have something in play to target with the spell in order for it to kill your opponent. But if you target one of your opponent's creatures with Malignant Moonbeam and deal let's say 500,000 damage to it, and it's got 2 toughness, well, congratulations, you just did 499,998 damage to your opponent. Yeah, it's an infinite mana outlet. That is the primary role it serves, and it is an infinite mana outlet that until that point can also just be removal for your deck that is generating a lot of mana. The fact of the matter is also just that you do not need this to be an infinite mana outlet if you are playing a deck that generates a lot of mana. Specifically, I think this is more relevant for Monument rather than relevant for Defenders. I think Defenders does not really end up in red, and at that point, you really don't want to be trying to make Malignant Moonbeam work because it is a dead card outside of the combo. Something like Monument to the 30, I think, is going to look to be more red-leaning. And in that regard, Malignant Moonbeam really benefits from that because it is a removal spell that you can play. It is something that, like, if you have 4 monuments, those tap for 16 total mana. That is something, like, you can just kill with Malignant Moonbeam without having to go infinite. That, like, 16 mana plus the mana that your lands tap for, you could just dome the opponent with Malignant Moonbeam by the way of, like, killing a Mnemologist and then all but 1 damage overruns to the opponent. So yeah, Malignant Moonbeam, pretty solid, I think. Nationed Vessel is a 2-mana 1/1. When it dies, you make a 3/2, and then put a -1/-1 counter on a creature you control. I think it's bad. We're going to move on. Nillicent Strider, I think is bad as well. 5-mana 4/5, reach. You get to impulse draw the top 2 cards of your library and play only 1. Rozon Laypillar, 3-mana 0/3, Defender. When it enters, you deal 3 damage to it. Deals 3 damage to any target. I don't think there's a lot going on for red as far as flicker synergies are concerned, but Rozon Laypillar is one of these, I think, one of the best creatures for flickering because it is burn that you can flicker. It's not the most incredible stat line, obviously. This does just this dies to Twilight Ambush, but I think if your opponent's Twilight Ambushing your Rozon Laypillar, you're probably doing pretty fine. I'm not sure if like a white-red or a Jeskai Blink deck could come together. Certainly, it is harder for me to justify wanting to play red in a Blink deck over black. And it's harder for me to justify playing any color other than blue after I am playing white because Nemologist exists. But I might explore what a Jeskai Blink deck looks like because Rozon Laypillar is so good. The biggest awkward point for Rozon Laypillar is it is, I think, the only real thing pulling the Defender's deck towards red, and I think the deck has so many better incentives to be a Sultai deck rather than like a Teamer deck. So that kind of stings overall for Rozon Laypillar, where it is a Defender that does not want to be in the Defender's Matter decks, which is unfortunate. Skycleave is not too shabby, actually. It is 3 and a red for a sorcery, costs 3 less to cast if it targets a creature you control. Hey, notice, mana value 4 can be cast for 1 mana. Deals 4 to a creature or planeswalker, put a -1/-1 counter on up to 1 other target creature. So, if you have something like, say, Portal Guardian, the 2 mana 2/1 that gets 2 +1/+1 counters whenever you cast a mana value 4 or greater instant or sorcery, or any spell, not just instant or sorcery, then Skycleave can make it so that creature only gets 1 +1/+1 counter while you spend 1 mana to deal 4 to a creature your opponent controls. I think this is a very real removal spell for such a strategy. And that's really all I have to say. I think Skycleave could be one of those enablers for the mana value 4+ decks. Moving on. Star-Touched Oracle. 2 mana for a 2/3 that gets a -1/-1 counters on a creature you control. That is more than 1 -1/-1 counter. So it's really a 2 mana 0/1. But you can tap it and remove a counter from it to discard a card if you do draw a card. So it could eventually be a 2/3 for 2. It rummages a couple times, which is nice. I don't think this is going to be seeing play, but it's one of the better counter synergy cards. Alwinor's Mark is one of our better green sideboard tools. 1 mana, choose one. Either creature you control fights a creature you don't control, or it deals 4 to target creature with flying. This does not kill every relevant thing with flying, but the next best option, which is Sky Snipe, also doesn't kill all the best things with flying. So in that way, they're kind of even. But Alwinor's Mark is also just nice because it's a 1 mana fight spell, so it gets the flexibility of being anti-flying tech while also just being removal. In green. Blinding Ambush is 4 mana. It costs 2 less if it targets a creature you control with Flash. This is something that will not be relevant for the mana value 4+ decks, unfortunately. It's an indestructible trick that also bites an opponent's creature. I don't think it matters. Crestfallen Colossus is 4 and double green for a 5/4 with Syzygy, and 2 and a green. It gets +1/+1 and trample until end of turn. It's fine. It's fine enough. Trample on this is very nice. I think it'll be reasonable in decks that are going wide in green. It is worth trying in the mana value 4+ decks for the same reason as the red Syzygy 6-drop is. This might even be a little bit better because it is like a trampler, so it can just kind of get push damage through more reliably. Yeah, I think Crestfallen Colossus is solid. Crust Gorger is 4 mana for a 5/5, but it puts 2 -1/-1 counters on a creature you control. You can remove a -1/-1 counter from it for 2 mana as a sorcery, and make it unblockable by creatures with 2 or less power for the turn, which is a lot of creatures in the format. I don't think it is ultimately going to be too relevant, but it is neat. Glimmermare is a 4 mana 2/3 that makes a 1/1 and a chart token when it enters. I don't think that matters. Moving on. Gorian Gladeheart is 5 mana for a 3/3 with Flash and Reach, and when it enters, you gain 3 life and draw a card. This is a really, really good text box and stat line. Not for 5 mana, but if I don't think it could exist at 4, which is a bummer, because I think this would be maybe worth trying out at 4. I don't think you try it at 5, though, unfortunately. Maybe if you're really desperate for things with, really relevant flicker effect, enter triggers for, a Bant flicker deck, maybe you're flickering Gorian Gladeheart over and over. Maybe that's the secret. Maybe that's the secret to Bant flicker working. I doubt it, but you could certainly try. Horizon Vassal is a 3 mana 3/2 with Flash, and it allows you to choose to mill 3 cards when it enters, so you don't have to. You can also pay 2 and a green and exile it and 2 other cards with the same name as it from your graveyard to create a 9/6 Wolf Spirit creature token with Trample. Now, you only get 4 copies of this in the deck, so you do need 3 of them in the bin overall. If your opponent has Graveyard Hate and can get rid of 2 of them, then this is just a 3/2 that mills 3 when it enters and has Flash. The question ultimately becomes, would you play 2 and a green for deal 3 damage to target attacking creature and mill 3 cards? No. I think the synergy thing here is a little too tenuous, little too like thin overall for it to be reliably good, and that I think overall just leaves it suffering. Canuck's Lay Pillar is the best of the defenders, at least outside of colorless. We'll get to it. It's the best of the monocolor defenders in Solastere, in my opinion. It is a 2-mana 0/3. When it enters, you may mill 2 cards. You may return a permanent milled this way to your hand. That defenders combo that I was talking about, almost every single relevant piece in that deck is a permanent. All of the combo pieces are permanents. And you can kind of build around Canuck's Lay Pillar by way of having all of your interaction be permanents as well. Your Omen, your counter spells can be Omen of Deception, which is an enchantment. Your removal can be Omen of Slaughter, or it can be Dead Weight, or Dishonor, or anything in that range. Canuck's Lay Pillar just gets to be so reliably good in that regard because it is going to be getting just about anything out of the top 2 cards. Like the frequency with which you can build your deck such that this is a 2-mana 0/3 that's Sleight of Hands, and then the card that you don't take goes to your graveyard rather than the bottom of your deck, which might matter for graveyard synergies if you've got them, is really good. The Canuck's Lay Pillar is I think one of the best commons in Solastere for Pauper play. Nebulous Rebirth, 4 mana for gain 2 life, and you may mill 2 cards. Then you may return a creature or a land card from your graveyard to your hand. That is a lot of mana for this effect. No. Prism Catcher is a card I really, really, really want to believe in. 1 and a green for a 1/3 with Syzygy and Reach. You can pay 1 and tap it to add 1 mana of any color. This is filtering mana up until you have a creature you're willing to tap, at which point this is tap another untapped creature you control to add 1 mana of any color. The fact that this can come down for 1 mana instead of 2 is very nice. The 1/3 Reach is very nice. I think it's just a little clunkier than some of our other 2-mana mana dorks. Because ultimately, the most enticing reason for this to be 1 mana would be if you can get it in play on turn 1, and we have no like Ornithopters or anything, no way to get a creature in play for 0 mana. If we had like Ornithopter Memnite, like Official Pauper has, I would be more keen on Prism Catcher in the double spell deck. We don't, so I'm just a bit bummed overall. Scintillating Vista is another classic 3 mana in aura that makes a land tap for an additional mana, and it makes a chart token when it enters. I don't think it matters. Startouch Devout is a 1/1 for 1. When it dies, you make a 1/1 with Wither and gain 2 life. This is an Aristocrats card in green. We don't have enough of these in green for me to be sitting here thinking like a green Aristocrats deck could work. Black-green Aristocrats could maybe do something, but I feel like we just have so many better incentives to be black-red or black-blue or black-white. Green, I think, has the least going for it for Aristocrats in Pauper specifically. So, unfortunately, I don't have a ton of faith in Startouch Devout. Step Beyond, however, is pretty good. It is like a chart token that you just cast from your hand rather than sacrificing from play, except it puts the land into play tapped rather than into your hand. It's double green, so it's a little tight on your mana requirements, but ultimately, this is just a rampant growth effect, and we only have so many of those. We have a lot of explore effects at common. We don't have a ton of rampant growths at common. The question just becomes, what are we ramping to? And the answer is nothing that we would rather ramp to than reanimate. So that's a bit awkward overall. But, I mean, hey, ramp tools are ramp tools. It's nice that we have this. We have moved on to multicolor, and you can see we still are. I don't know if we can see. Can you see you cannot see the scroll bar. We still have a lot of cards left to talk about in this set. Cepheus Delugo is the first of our 10 adventure spells at common. They are all going to be 2-color spells, 2-color big creatures with a hybrid cost adventure. Path of Clarity is 2 and a white-blue hybrid for an instant that blinks a permanent you own. Specifically that you own, so if your opponent steals it, somehow you can get it back, and you cannot scam with it, which is wholesome. And if you ever cast it, it's an 8 mana 8/8 that taps or untaps another target non-land permanent. I don't think it's all that great. It's a very expensive flicker effect overall. It's a flicker effect that quote-unquote draws a card, but I think in Pauper especially, the high cost on the adventure creatures here could be a real liability. However, it does answer that question I just asked of what we're ramping to, so certainly worth keeping in mind. Coria Portenus is a 9-mana 9/9. Whenever a creature blocks it, its controller loses 3 life. So afflict 3 on a 9/9 for 9 is interesting. Path of Secrecy, 1 in a blue or a black. Instant, you draw a card and lose 1 life. Rough to be playing this in blue. A little less rough to be playing this in black. Overall, I think it's a really mediocre cantrip. Even if it technically draws a second card, that second card is a 9-drop. I don't think that matters too much. Cornus Isare, I think Asare, is a 9-mana 9/8. When it attacks, defending player sacrifices 2 permanents. That is a nasty attack trigger. It also has Path of Abundance, 1 in a red or a green for an instant. Create a tapped treasure token. I will always be a naysayer on making tapped treasures, but I do think that this is one of the times where it is a little understandable. You're not playing this to be used as a ritual. You are playing this to bank the mana for a future turn. And this is one of the things that's really worth ramping out. If you can get this in play and get it to attack immediately, this will just kind of make your opponent miserable. Now, yes, we do have some things that spit out a lot of token permanents. Look no further than Download Courier, but I do think Cornus Isare could be something really worth trying to slip into play as quickly as possible. Deimos Tormundus is an 8-mana 8/7 with Menace, and Path of Anguish is 1 in a black or a red. Sorcery. Target player discards a card unless they sacrifice a permanent. So what I'm understanding about this is that they can always choose to discard a card. They can get around discarding a card by sacrificing a permanent instead, which means if their hand is empty, this does not force them to sacrifice a permanent, if I'm understanding correctly, which means it's not amazing. And I don't think the 8-mana 8/7 with Menace is quite enough to be excited about off of that adventure spell. Gomata Lumenos is a 7-mana 5/7 that's unblockable if you've cast a non-creature spell in the turn. That can just clock the opponent very quickly. And Path of Reverie, its adventure, is 2 and a blue or a red for an instant that rebuys a non-creature non-land card with mana value 3 or less from your graveyard. That being an instant speed is pretty nice. I think it's mostly just a problem of I have no idea what deck would want that effect necessarily. Having access to that in mono red is pretty appealing because if you have any treasure generation, then you've got the blue mana to cast Gomata Lumenos if you find yourself needing to, and you can just play this for Path of Reverie as 2 and a red rebuy an instant or sorcery with mana value 3 or less, which is a very weird thing for red to have access to at instant speed. It's a cool thing to have access to, though. Leonis Concitare. I think I said this in the set review for Solastere. I'm going to butcher these names, and I will just be butchering these names. 8-mana 8/7 Trample. Very good keyword to have on a big body. Path of Sanctity is 1 in a green or a white for an instant that gains you 4 life. That sounds like it's pretty bad. It's probably one of the better adventures. Just because having ways to stabilize your life total against all of the aggro decks in the field is good. If you're trying to eventually get to be putting these big creatures into play, having something that buys you time is always nice. Noctir Ascentus is a 7-mana 4/5 flyer with Path of Reverence, 1 and a white or a black to make a 0/4 wall artifact creature with Defender. It's fine. I think it's one of the less notable adventure spells, but I think it's one of the more reasonable ones as well. So just kind of land on it's fine. Serpens Surrectus is Just 1 mana for its adventure Path of Renewal, 1 mana to return a creature with mana value, not mana value, power 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. 1 mana for that effect is very nice, and it's eventually an 8 mana 8/6 that can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, which I think I've said before is a lot of creatures in this format. This can be double blocked and killed in this format. Certainly, Double Mnemologist does so, but there are not many creatures that can block this to begin with. So Serpens Surrectus will very often at least be a 2-for-1 if it ever gets to attack. And that is on top of Path of Renewal rebuying a creature. The 1 mana cost on this, it kind of just lands as like, would you pay 1 mana for for 2 creatures, 1 out of your graveyard and 1 top end thing later on? And I think yes, in Pauper, I would. If I'm playing like a more attrition leaning black-green deck, I totally would reach for something like this. I know black-green mid-range is something people are experimenting with. I think if you're playing black-green mid-range, you are playing things like Lore Blackmailer, you are playing these like 1s and 2s that start to get the ball rolling, I think you should reach for Serpens Surrectus. I think it is something that is absolutely worth your while. Tigros Perseus. 7 mana 6/8. When it attacks, you may put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. And then its adventure is Path of Justice, which is 1 mana, either red or white, to put a -1/-1 counter on a creature that's attacking, blocking, or tapped. Very mediocre removal effect. Certainly compared to our 1 mana red and white removal spells. Red and or white removal spells. It is far more lackluster, but you are paying the 1 mana for this much more lackluster removal spell because it is eventually a 7 mana 6/8 that puts -1/-1 counters on things every time it swings in. Do I think this is going to be super relevant? Probably not, but it exists. And then I believe the last one here is Tarintos Fulgeos? 7 mana 7/7 with Flash and Trample. It enters tapped if it isn't your turn. Path of Preservation is 1 and a green or a blue for an instant. Gives a creature you control base power and toughness 4/4 until end of turn. I don't think it matters a whole lot. Moving on to Hybrid. All of these spells have double hybrid pips in their mana cost. They're not all necessarily 2 mana, as you might kind of be able to see at the bottom of the screen here. Attuned Lightbinder is double green, double blue hybrid. For a 2/1 Elf Cleric with Flash, and when it enters, target creature you control gains +1 toughness and gains hexproof until end of turn. I don't think it's all that great. Certainly we have better hexproof tricks that are 1 mana. Having to spend 2 mana to hold up your hexproof trick is certainly a lot worse, but your hexproof trick being a body on board could be pretty nice. This is also just a 2/2 for 2 that blocks on the turn that it comes in, and then it's a 2/1 on future turns. So that's also an option. Awakened Aberration is something for the mono red or like blue red sacrifice deck that we've hypothesized on, because it is a 3 mana 3/3 double red green hybrid and 1. When it attacks, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, it gets +1/+1 and gains indestructible until end of turn. You curve Mesmage into Awakened Aberration into activate Mesmage, steal your opponent's creature, swing Aberration, sacrifice the stolen creature, and be swinging a 4/4 indestructible creature. That is a very funny, very real thing you can do. And now is when I need to note that I have talked about Red Devotion. So, Red Devotion. Let's just kind of sort by mana value and... Oh, wait, no, I'm going to... Okay, that didn't break this. I did not break this. Good. Catch Constable, Ignited Soul, Scorching Gecko, all as 1-drops. We have not gotten to Blinding Inquisitor. We haven't... We'll skip some of these. We will skip some of these. But, like, Loop is card advantage in mono red over time. Mesmage steals things, your sacrifice energies, online. Scions of War, a sack outlet for your Mesmages. And now we've got Awakened Aberration, another sack outlet for your Mesmages. And hey, if we're looking for sack outlet stuff, Catch Constable is a mono-red piece of sacrifice fodder. These are all hybrid spells, mind you. There's mono red stuff that's very good for sacrifice. I mentioned we have 3 different red 1-drops that make treasures when they die. Mono red sacrifice might be a real thing, and it gets to double as a mono red devotion deck that gets to play goddamn Colossus of Tracks. So, like, it's a thing that you can do. It's a very real way you could approach that strategy. Mono red devotion sacrifice. Would I advise you play it? Probably not, but I'm certainly gonna try it, I think, because my god, it's so silly. So yeah, that is a thing that exists. That's a thing you can do, and this is now a piece of that puzzle. Blinded Herald is suffering for the same reason as the 1-mana Angel in Errors in the Weft. Oh no, it's not even an Angel Soldier. I forgot they eroded it. God damn it, Scribble. Why'd you take my Angel Soldier away from me? Never mind, it doesn't even matter for that anymore. It makes a weapon when it enters. Yippee. This card makes me sad. Why isn't it a soldier? Why can't it be a soldier? Anyways, Blinding Inquisitor. Blinding Inquisitor, we did just scroll past when we were looking at the red hybrid cards at common. It is double red, double white. Of course, hybrid, it can be 1 of each, can be 2 of 1. For a 2/1, when it blocks or becomes blocked by a creature, put a -1/-1 counter on that creature. This is going to sound kind of weird, but this is a 2-drop that can actually trade with Renegade Apprentice. And you might be thinking, wait a minute, 2/2 first strike kills a 2/1. How does it trade? By putting a -1/-1 counter on Renegade Apprentice, and then at the end of turn, the Apprentice loses the stat buff and goes back to being a 1/1 that dies with that -1/-1 counter. Do you want Blinding Inquisitor to trade with Renegade Apprentice? Not especially, but anything that gets temporary buffs, any like prowess threats that might be able to, like buff out of range of the -1/-1 counter in the moment, will still die to Blinding Inquisitor after the fact. So that could be pretty nice. I don't think it's going to be great, though. I want to clarify. I don't think it's all that playable, but it does trade with things pretty reliably. Elemental Advent is another Krankos command. Double blue, double red hybrid. Instant, make 2 1/1 red elemental creature tokens. So I have mentioned that mono blue devotion, also a thing I'm thinking about. One of the things that I have been thinking about in that regard is mono blue devotion being something of a tokens deck, where it's not necessarily a full dedicated devotion deck, but it is a deck that is looking to go wide. And so now we have Elemental Advent, and color, we'll do color is either blue or color is greater than blue and is hybrid. Create creature tokens. Or sorry, create, yeah. Well, so we got Conjure Forth, which is the 1-mana reason to be in on this plan. Works really well with these instant and sorceries that spit out tokens. Meeting of the Minds makes 2 prowess tokens. Not sure if that's too relevant, but if we're playing a bunch of instants and sorceries that do this, certainly it looks a little bit better. And then we have Sky's Flourishing, which cares about these flyers. And then if we are going super wide, so we also have Gossamer Dreamer, which can be making tokens whenever it swings in. Granted, those tokens go away, but that is an option. And then if we are going super wide, hey, what do you know? I did pay a lot of lip service to how good Architect of Ascension looks. And if you're going wide in mono blue of all things, it could be very easy to get this down for 2 mana. So yeah, that is a package that you could absolutely experiment with. This activated ability even gives it flying to enable Sky's Flourishing, which is pretty funny. I don't think that would be where you end on pieces. I think you do wind up wanting to play more real prowess threats, real tempo threats lower on curve. You want to be playing a good amount of interaction lower on curve. I don't know if this is actually a devotion deck necessarily. I don't think you can get away with playing Colossus of Tracks when so many of your threats are tokens. But I do think that this is a shell that could be very interesting as well. Ephemeral Leech. Oh, also, it's also just a mono red token maker as well, which is nice. Ephemeral Leech is double black-green hybrid for a 3/2 that enters tapped. and when it enters or dies, you surveil 1. It's solid stats for the cost. I think the 2 toughness is a bit of a liability overall, but if you're playing these like black-green decks that are just kind of like looking to do some graveyard synergy things and want good stat lines for the cost, this can kind of fill that role. I don't think it's going to be super important, but it does exist, and it is a solid role player overall. Lackey Fae Pastor is a 3 and a 3/2. When another creature you control enters, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn, and you gain 1 life. Not too shabby overall. I think it's maybe a bit awkward because, again, 2 toughness is very, very awkward overall, and 3 mana for a 2 toughness creature is a lot worse than a 2 mana for a 2 toughness creature. But +1/+1 for each of your creatures that enters and gaining 1 life for each of those creatures as well is very nice. There are some murmurs about like a life gain strategy where Lackey Fae Pastor looks like it could be a solid piece of that puzzle. Sort of like Soul Sisters adjacent, and then this can be not only a like solid life gain engine, but also something that can try and beat in for a good amount of damage. Voidborn Flare is probably one of the most skippable of these. 3 and a 3/2 that rummages when it enters, and it's got Menace. Zukar's Informant, however, is very good. 3 and a 2/3 in blue and black hybrid. Whenever it attacks, you draw a card and lose 1 life. So this will just almost always be able to draw you at least 1 card. It does kind of demand removing. It's kind of awkward that you can't have it apply pressure without losing the life. So if your life total is really low, but you need to start finishing off your opponent, this might not be something that's safe to swing in with. But it's just 3 mana 2/3, fine enough stats overall, and this is a repeatable draw engine that does not ask you to wait every 3 turns for the draw like Nemologist does. Do I think it's better than Nemologist? Hell no! I do not think that. I would never dare to think that or suggest that. It is not Nemologist. It could never be Nemologist. Do I think that means it's worthless? Also, hell no. This card looks really fine. It's very solid. I think if you are looking for something in a bit more of a tempo or mid-range role, if you're looking for something that's capable of swinging in, dealing reliable damage, especially if you're looking for tempo, I think this could be a very, very nice top-end threat for a tempo shell. Zymoth Skyguide is 1 and white-blue hybrid, 2/1 flyer. When it enters, you can return another permanent you control to its owner's hand. If you do, you make a 1/1 spirit that does not fly. If that spirit was flying, I'd have a little more faith in it, but even then, 1 toughness sweepers are the name of the game in the format, and that really stings for Zymoth Skyguide. On to colorless. Caresoul Morningstar is bad for this format. Heraldic Leypillar is amazing for this format. It's a 3 mana 1/4 defender. It enters with a -1/-1 counter on it, so it's really a 0/3. But you can pay 2 generic mana at instant speed while stripping a -1/-1 counter from it to search your library for a creature card with Defender, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle. This will go find your Silversong battlements to get your key mana generating Defender into play for Defender combo. This will go find your Silver Bullet walls for utility purposes. It finds you the defender you most need in the situation that you're in. It is a perfect include for the defender's combo, I think. Light Pierced Envoy is a bit of a tricky one. It's another one of these like aristocrats adjacent cards that dies and makes a non-creature artifact token. 1 mana colorless is kind of nice. It's a lot more flexible in that regard. Dying and making a weapon token is pretty nice as well. I don't know where this wants to be. We don't really have a lot of artifact sacrifice synergies, but if we ever did get more in the future, if we ever had a Pauper Eternal deck start to emerge that really is sacrificing artifacts repeatedly, this looks like a great candidate for it. Meteoric Harvester functionally has Persist. We don't have Persist payoffs, and even if we did, we have Persist creatures that are a little better than this in Karslav, so don't think it matters at the end of the day. Nascent Star is a 2 mana artifact that puts a -1/-1 counter on target creature. You may have it put a counter on that creature. So it can kill a 1 toughness creature in colorless for 2 mana, which is interesting. You can also pay 2 tap and sacrifice to do that again as a sorcery, or pay 7 tap and sacrifice to pop any non-land permanent. It's not terrible, honestly. If our flicker effects had ways to flicker artifacts over enchantments. This might be an artifact worth flickering. We don't, so it isn't, but it's interesting. Waypoint Armillary is another one of those artifacts that really wants us to have artifact sacrificing synergies. And we do have like Sundering the Fleet, we do have Deadly Dispute, so they do exist. And I think this is something that's much more reliably good with those effects than leaning on like Light Pierced Envoy. 2 mana chart artifact. It has the chart activated ability, but it also, when it enters or you sacrifice it, you make a tapped 1/1 non-flying spirit token. And then finally for lands, we have Evolving Wild, and we have the tapped life gain lands. It's not going to be super construct relevant. We also have Withered Waygate. This, if colorless matters, is a deck that could really emerge. This is probably one of our best overall colorless lands for such a strategy, because it is removal in your mana base. It enters with a -1/-1 counter on it, taps for colorless. You can pay 2 and tap and move its -1/-1 counter to target creature as a sorcery. To my knowledge, there's no way to put more of its -1/-1 counters on it, so you can't really proliferate this by any means. You can't really add more, so this can be repeatable removal, but it can take out a 1 toughness creature at some point. Something like that in your mana base could be nice, but I don't think it's too relevant right now. If we were to get another colorless matter set in the future, though, the next time we come to Pauper Eternal, we will have to reevaluate all of our colorless stuff. Potentially. So that is Solastere. It has the most commons of any of the sets we're talking about today. We do have 2 more sets to talk about, so we're going to roll right into them because we have already been at this for an hour and a half. Oh my god, we've been at this for much longer than the other 2 streams have been at the point we finish the first set. We're going to have to move pretty fast, I think. So, Angelic Purge is a canon card reprinted into Innistrad Witching Hour. I don't think it's too relevant. We're going to move on. Bewitching Hagmother is a 5-drop. I don't think it's too relevant. We're going to be moving on. Bleachbark Dryad is an Aristocrats card in white. It's a 2-drop that dies into something, which is a lot worse than a 1-drop that dies into something. We're going to move on. Cathar's Charm is the first card we really need to talk about. It's a 1 mana instant. Modal, you either have each opponent sacrifice an enchantment. It deals 2 to target tapped creature, or exile up to 3 target cards from graveyards. All 3 of these modes are relevant in Pauper Eternal. This is a very, very nice white sideboard card. I could see people trying to make it work in main decks. I would not blame them for trying to put its flexibility to use in the main, but I do think it is maybe better in the sideboard. Overall, I would not be surprised to see some people putting it in their 75s. Chapel Soul Guide is a 4 mana 3/3 flyer that can give something else flying when it dies. We're moving on. Gavany Trapper is a 0 power tapping effect. We're going to move on. Haunted Doll is something we will talk about a little bit. It's a 1 mana 1/2 flyer. It's an artifact creature, which could be relevant sometimes. And you can pay 2 and a white and sacrifice it to blink out a permanent you control and then return it to the battlefield tapped. I don't think it's amazing by any means. I do think it's kind of clunky, but it's a flicker effect that just sits in play. It's a 1 mana 1/2 flyer, which is solid enough. I don't know. I don't have a lot of faith in it, but it could do some things. I've registered it in rotation. Granted, I registered it in a spirits deck where it was just one of the only spirits we had at 1, and certainly the spirits payoffs do not exist at common, so the relevant ones don't. Lumberjack's Axe is, I think, one of the best equipments in Pauper Eternal. 2 mana, enters, draws you a card. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has vigilance, and it equips for 1. I think this is very solid, very simple, good role player. +1/+1 in vigilance for 1 to equip is a very nice overall set of stats. Yeah, this is just fine. This is just solid. I don't think we have many decks that want you to be playing equipment, but we do have a couple of those Valiant cards from Cliques of Nylon. The whenever it comes to target of a spell or ability you control once each turn does a thing. And Lumberjack's Axe does look kind of nice there, so that could be neat. Moon Rapture is not the kind of Oblivion Ring effect we are looking to play. Morn Wraith is no Storm Jelly, and so we move on. Shut up about it being strictly better Storm Jelly because it surveils 1. It's not Storm Jelly. Nearheath Disciples is solid. enough. It's 2 mana 2/2 with Vigilance. When it dies, it becomes an aura that enchants. You may have it become an aura that enchants a creature. If the enchanted creature is a human or a spirit, it gets +1/+1. So it can be a 2/2 that dies into a quote-unquote +1/+1 counter, provided the creature it's enchanting is a human or a spirit. I think just overall raw stats is probably not enough, so I think it's just kind of not going to get there, unfortunately. Pious Friar is one of the ways to potentially pay off these go wide strategies. 2 mana 3/1, tap 2 untapped creatures you control and tap itself to transform it and untap it as a sorcery into Zealous Inquisitor, a 4/2 that attacks each combat Fable, and you can pay 5 generic to have target creature be unable to block this turn. This is not going to cut it. 2 toughness on the backside is real awkward for the work you got to do to get it. And the fact that you have to swing in with it makes it really awkward as well. Sacred Stag is not something you play for the front side. You play it for that activated ability. 2 and a white, return it from your graveyard to the battlefield, transformed and attached to target player. Whenever enchanted player casts a spell, each of that player's opponents gains 1 life. This is something you play in your sideboard of your white-leaning graveyard strategy as a way to have a tech card potentially to try and shore up your burn matchups. Is it going to help you win your mono red matches? Probably not, but it might. It's not going to single-handedly win those matchups, but it might help, rather. So yeah, it's a sideboard tool, I think, more than anything. Saint Blessed Priest, 4 mana for a 3/3 Vigilance creature. When it enters, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. You gain a life for each human you control. Doesn't really matter. Saint's Salvation does not really matter either. It's a Spirits Matter card that taps or untaps a non-land permanent and draws you a card. You can pay 1 instead of beholding a spirit. This does kind of, if you have like Monument to the 30 and it taps for at least 3 mana, this is mana positive to draw a card, which could be nice. But I think if that's the direction you're going with Monument to the 30, you're probably better off doing something else. Sigardian Griff Knight is a lot of mana for a pretty mediocre effect overall. Thalia's Skill is a decent but not overly constructed playable combat trick. Thribbin Stalwart is solid enough. 3 mana 3/2. It has first strike as long as it's your turn. 2 toughness really does stink. Concord, if you have 4 or more permanent types among permanents you control, when it attacks, you prevent all damage that will be dealt to it this turn. The 2 toughness is a bummer overall. I think it does hold it back, but it could be interesting at some point. Moving on to blue, Distilled Essence is another quench effect. This time, if the spell's controller pays 2, you get Stitch 2, which is if you have an instant or sorcery and a creature in your graveyard that you're willing to exile, you can make a 2/2 blue zombie token. I don't think it's ultimately that important, unfortunately. Enthralled Alchemist might be interesting. It's 1 mana for a 1/2. You pay 2 mana and discard an instant or sorcery to draw a card, and then flip it into Chrysalis Emergent, a 3/2 green flyer with trample. When it deals combat damage to a player, you sacrifice it unless you exile an instant or sorcery card from your graveyard. So this is something that you want to play in a blue spellslingery tempo strategy, very much like you would expect the Delver it's paying respect to want to be. This is no Delver of Secrets, but certainly Delver of Secrets was a mainstay in Pauper for a very long time in official Magic. This could certainly do an attempt to try and pay homage to that, but certainly without like Daze and Gush, it's probably not going to be too relevant. We don't have those kinds of spells here. Geist of the Erdwall Road. 3 mana 1/3 with Possess. Whenever it or enchanted creature deals combat damage to an opponent, draw a card. Just a little bit too much mana, but it is kind of neat. Geist Researcher, 2 mana 2/1 with Vigilance. You play it mostly for its graveyard clause. When it ends up in your graveyard, you can pay 4 into blue to get Curse of Haunted Skies. Whenever 1 or more creatures attack enchanted player, target attacking creature gets +1/+1 and gains flying until end of turn. Untap that creature. It's so much mana, you're not playing this. Drolf's Studies is a sorcery speed 3 mana disperse that draws a card. Gravestitch Fledgling, 1 mana 1/1 flyer with Vigilance. Solid enough keywords. 1/1's a little awkward. When it dies, you may exile it if you do Stitch 2. I don't think that's super relevant overall, unfortunately. Herald of Crothus, 3 mana 2/3. When it enters, you surveil 2. You can pay 3 and exile it from your graveyard to tap and stun a creature. As a sorcery, probably not super relevant. Horrendous Experiment, 2 mana, 2/3 defender. You can sack it in another creature to draw 2 cards. Not super relevant. Hulking Horror, 4 mana, 3/4. Whenever it or another zombie you control enters. Surveil 1, not super relevant. Lingering Presence, potentially relevant. 2 mana, 1/3 flyer. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery or spirit, it gets +1 power until end of turn. That does kind of feel like it's a 2 mana prowess creature. Specifically, one with 3 toughness and flying. A lot of respect has been paid to Skyward Magus, and I think for good reason. Skyward Magus does look very good. A lot of people have chatted about blue-red prowess, and certainly blue-red prowess looks really good. But mono-blue prowess could also absolutely work, and Skyward Magus and Lingering Presence are both reasonable 2-drops for such a strategy. So I think these could absolutely be the pairing that you reach for in mono-blue. And certainly Lingering Presence survives removal on your opponent's turn a lot better than Skyward Magus does, which is nice. March of the Drowned-Tide is a just fine tuck spell. We're moving on. Night Fright is a power-reducing creature that has a Spirits Matter thing, power-reducing spell that has a Spirit Synergy thing and draws a card. Doesn't really matter. Scions of Flesh and Spirit is it's a blue sacrifice thing, so it could be relevant with like Mesmage and stuff. 3 mana, 3/2. Enters, you may sacrifice a creature. If you do, you mill 3 cards and can get one of those cards to your hand. So it's strategic planning, provided you sacrifice a creature. I think that could be all right. I don't think you want to play this alongside Mesmage just because having to spend 5 total mana to steal and sacrifice the thing. I think with Mesmage, you'd much rather have things in play that already sacrifice them, or you want really cheap ways of sacrificing your opponent's creatures. And this is neither cheap nor gets to sit in play and then sacrifice the thing. Storms over Nephalia is a cancel, but it's a cancel with Threshold to make a 1/1 flyer that can't block. It's fine. I don't think it's anything special, but it's fine. Thought Scour is a big deal. Target player mills 2 cards and draw a card. If you're in a graveyard synergy deck and you're in blue and you want a cantrip, this might be the cantrip you reach for. Tormented Bride, 5 mana, 2/5. That's all I need to say. We're moving on. Trapped in the Mirror is 2 mana for an aura. When it enters, if enchanted creature's power is 3 or less, you tap it, and it gets rid of the abilities and prevents the creature from untapping. It's fine. I don't think it's anything super special, unfortunately. Wailing Apparition, tap target creature and opponent controls. If you have a spirit, it stuns it. It's 4 mana for a 3/3. We're moving on to black. Bittersweet Parting is a pretty mediocre removal spell. Bounty of Trostad. If you're in a zombies deck, or if you have a high density of zombies, 2 mana return 2 zombies from graveyard to your hand is very nice. Otherwise, I think it's just a bit too much, a bit too clunky. Callous Killer is 3 mana for a 3/2 menace that I think we should talk about at least a little bit. You pay 1 in a black and then sacrifice another creature to draw a card. That is a very expensive sacrifice mode, but it's a black sack outlet that you can have in play. And then if there are 7 or more cards in your graveyard, you can transform it as a sorcery, and it stops being a menacing creature, stops being a sack outlet, does start being a 4/4 flyer, which is a pretty real stat line. I think it is totally reasonable to expect your Aristocrats deck to eventually wind up with Threshold active, and if Threshold is active, being able to flip your sack outlet into a 4/4 flyer that can start beating down your opponent is pretty nice. Cornered by the Dead is just not a good enough edict. We have so many edicts that are better than this, unfortunately. Deranged Ravager is 2 and a black for a 2/1 lifelinker with the ability to gorge when it enters, so you can sacrifice another creature or discard a card to put a counter on it and draw a card. Not super relevant for reanimator effects because, again, a lot of our best reanimation targets self-discard, so ultimately just a bit awkward. Festering Rats, I really like. 2 mana for a 2/2 that surveils 2 on enter. That has been something that's super, just like whatever. But if Threshold's active, it's a 3/2 with Death Touch, +1 power and Death Touch. It's not the most incredible thing in the world. But I played the 1/1 for 1 that surveils 2 on enter last time around, in part because it had the ability to gain Death Touch for a single black mana as an activated ability. And this just gets to sit with Death Touch in play. I don't think it necessarily gets to see a ton of play, but I do kind of like it. Mortis Infusion is a lot of mana for a combat trick that is also a Feign Death. Ossuary Guardian is a lot of mana for a body that you don't really care about. The primary thing is Curse of Broken Bones. For 3 and a black, you can transform it out of your graveyard as an Aristocrat's Payoff. When your creature you control dies, enchanted player loses 1 life. So if you're playing an Aristocrat's deck and you have a way to get this into your graveyard reliably, you can pay 3 and a black and then just throw your Blood Artist effect directly on your opponent as an aura. It is not one of our better Blood Artist effects by any means. We don't have a ton at common, though, so we'll make do with what we got, right? Overfueled Abomination is 5 mana. We're moving on. Overlord of Ashmouth is 6 mana. We're moving on for the most part. It's worth noting, this is sacrifice another creature to destroy something with mana value 3 or less and opponent controls. It's a 5/5 with flying if you have Threshold active. It's fine, but 6 mana for this and having to sacrifice another creature to remove something from your opponent's board is probably not super important. Profane Sustenance is a combat trick that still gets to do something when you discard it. I don't think that matters. Rotjaw Predator is a 3 mana 1/4 that gets to tap and drain an opponent, but only if a card left your graveyard this turn. Writhling You Are Not. Sacrificial Lamb is a single black mana 1/1. When it dies, you draw a card. You can tap it to sacrifice it. This is a very reasonable fodder card. As you might expect from a card called Sacrificial Lamb. You can tap and sacrifice it to just kill it and draw a card and replace itself. But often I think you would rather use this as the thing you are sacrificing to a different sack outlet. In which case, it's a 1/1 that replaces itself for 1 mana. Very, very nice. Scorned Zombie is 2 mana for a 2/2 that returns itself to your hand for 5 mana from your graveyard. Costs 1 less to activate, though, for each zombie you control. Don't think it matters, unfortunately. Soren's Investigation is a bit of hand attack for 2 mana. It's one of our better hand attack spells, honestly, at 2 mana. You choose a creature or planeswalker in your opponent's hand to make them discard it. Then you can have up to 1 target creature you control Gorge, which lets you discard a non-land card or sacrifice another creature to put a counter on the creature you control, and you draw a card. So it's pretty solid. Doesn't hit all of the relevant types. Creature is the only one that matters here. We do have Raven's Ire, which is creature or sorcery for 1 mana. But that comes with no further upside, no further value. The value on this might be worth taking over the mana efficiency. Stromkirk Vanguard is 2 mana for a 2/1. When it dies, you make a 1/1 with lifelink, and you can pay 4 mana to give it +2/+2. It's not really all that good of an Aristocrat's card. Thirsty Work is 1 mana for -2/-2, and you gain 2 life if you can behold a vampire. Voracious Assembly, 3 and a black for a 3/3 with Death Touch. You may discard a card when it enters to return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. I do really like this effect. The problem is, that's not how you spell Viper. I like it at 2 mana when it's a 2/1, not a 4 mana 3/3. And unfortunately, I don't think Carrion Viper is all that playable either, because Writhling no longer draws you a card when it leaves your graveyard. And that was why I liked Carrion Viper back in the last Pauper tournament. So, an effect I have classically liked. This doesn't get to return the thing you discard either, which Carrion Viper could do, which is another bummer for Voracious Assembly. So, ultimately, just not going to quite get there. Ashmouth Wolf is kind of just skippable. It's a rummager, but you have to spend mana to rummage every time. Cackling Igniter is a real deal. 1 mana 1/1 with haste. When it dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. So I think that's already decently reasonable for mono red by all means. It's not one of the better red 1-drops, but I think it's fine enough. And then Curse of Wildfire is 3 and a red from your graveyard attached to that player to an opponent at sorcery speed to have them take 1 damage at their upkeep for the rest of the game. A lot of the decks that are trying to be mono red are going to try and rely on being able to stabilize and keep them from just constantly applying damage, force them to sort of run out of burn spells and creatures. Cackling Igniter is a way to get around that, and the nature of mono red is such that your opponent isn't going to want to be playing enchantment removal or dedicate slots to enchantment removal in their main deck. because that does nothing against so many of your threats. And so Curse of Wildfire gets to be this secondary threat after the fact that they need to find a way to deal with, that without that way of dealing with it being something that's very awkward against the rest of your mono red deck. I think Cackling Igniter is real good. It's not the only one that's real good. Covetous Neonate. 1 mana, 1/1. Gets +1/+0 and haste as long as there's an instant, sorcery, or vampire in your graveyard. It also makes a blood when it dies. I think that's the less important part. It's a 2/1. It's a hasty 2/1 for 1 if there's an instant or sorcery in your graveyard. The vampire part also feels mostly like flavor text, but that's a not a big deal. It's fine. Embers of a New Moon is a card I hyped up, and it has not panned out so far. 1 mana, behold a wolf or werewolf as an additional cost, or pay 2, so it could be 3 mana. Impulse, draw the top 2 cards of your library. We have some solid wolves and werewolves in rotation. To my understanding, that has not helped this see play, see like reliable, stable play in rotation. The wolves and werewolves at common get a significant tick worse. I think Embers of a New Moon looks a lot worse in Pauper. Erdball Fangseeker is like a 5 mana 5/4 with haste if you can meaningfully gorge it, but I don't think that matters. Falconwrath Executor is not awful. 2 mana 1/1 with menace. Impulse, draw the top card of your library when it enters. I don't know where this like wants to slot in, but it is not a terrible 2-drop. Feodrax Hunger is a 5 mana overcosted burn spell that costs 3 on your turn. Deals 5 to a creature or planeswalker and exiles it if it would die. This kills most creatures in the format for 3 mana. If you're looking to spend 3 mana in red to kill just about any creature, that is maybe an awkward spot to be. But it's a cost-reducing spell that costs more than 4, so that could be something for the mana value 4 or greater synergy deck. Something to think about. Full Moon Assault is 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker for 2 mana. If you have a savage creature, which is one that's either transformed or has an improved power over its base, you can cast this as though it had Flash. Unfortunately, the red decks that would mostly be looking for like 2 mana deal 3s are decks that are looking for those spells to be able to go face. Gormare is a 3 mana 2/2. When you cast an instant or sorcery, it gets a +1/+1 counter and gains menace until end of turn. I don't think it really matters, unfortunately. Handwear Sentries is 5 mana 5/4 with reach, and the Werewolf Claws to flip into a 6/5 with menace and reach. I don't think it matters. Herald of Ashmouth is a 6 mana 7/5 with trample. When you discard it, so you have to have a way to discard it, you can pay 1 and a red to make a 1/1 devil that pings something when it dies. It's a little clunky overall, I think. Moonlight Firemaker is another werewolf. 3 mana 2/3. You can pay 2, tap it to keep a creature from blocking, and becomes a 4/3 that just keeps something from blocking whenever it attacks. Don't think it's quite there. Audric's Fury is like something that can trigger heroic while drawing a card. +1/+0 if it's a vampire, or if you've cast another instant or sorcery this turn, it gains menace until end of turn, and you cantrip. It's not terrible. So if you find enough heroic payoffs in red, might work. Give me just a moment. Ravenous Companions, 3 mana 2/3, first strike as long as it's your turn. Pay 3, sacrifice another creature to get +2/+1 and trample until end of turn is just a bit too expensive. Russet Pack Predator is fine, but not that important to me, I don't think. Stain with Crimson is kind of interesting. It does a solid enough impression of copies 5+ of Face of Animosity, in that it is +2/+0 trample and a +1/+1 counter on a creature you control. It's 1 more mana, and you have to gorge to get that +1/+1 counter. But like, it's not impossible to just have non-land cards you don't care about in your hand that you'd be willing to convert into 1 extra damage. Obviously, like some other cards I've talked about, you don't slot this into your deck. You don't play the first copy until you've already got copies 1 through 4 of Face of Animosity, but if you're really desperate for that spell, having a 5th might not hurt. Stormbrewer Alchemist is a big deal. 2 mana for a 2/1 with reach, and it's one of our only Electromancer effects. Instants and sorceries cost 1 less to cast. You can pay 4 and a red and transform it into Unshackled Stormgeist as a sorcery, which is a 3/2 flyer that rebuys an instant or sorcery from your graveyard to your hand. That is also very nice. The primary reason to care about it is just that it's a cost reducer. I have said it before and I'll say it again. There are things that make me feel like there could be a Storm deck here. I just don't see how it quite comes together, and I don't know how it pays off overall, which is a bummer because I do like those kind of strategies, especially in formats like Pauper, where the ways to make it come together are a little bit more scarce and requires more creativity. But I have not quite figured it out. Certainly, I imagine combo brewers are trying their best. Lee, if you have any ideas, sound off, but I'm drawing a blank. Finally, for red, Stromkirk Warlord is just Battle Rattle Shaman. That's not a Pauper card. Backroads Incursion is 2 mana to pop an artifact or a creature with flying. If you have a savage creature, you also get to Surveil 2. Don't think that especially matters. Like I've mentioned, enchantments are the most important non-creature type to be dealing with. And also, we're kind of in this weird spot of the best enchantments to be dealing with are tokens. Backroads Incursion just looks kind of awkward. Blood Trail Reclaimer has gotten some attention. It's a 3 and a 2/3 with reach. When it enters, you may return target artifact or enchantment card from your graveyard to your hand. That is one of 2 things that we have. Skaravi Scald does the exact same thing. It's the exact same card, sort of. Rather than getting an enchantment or an artifact, and rather than having reach, it does not have reach, does not get artifacts, does get cards with glory, which doesn't really matter for Pauper. The important thing is just that we have 2 different versions of this effect, so you can have density of it, because Gravelit Meditation lets you edict yourself and your opponent. You don't have to edict if you don't want to, but you can. You can sacrifice it to return a creature card from your graveyard to your hand. If you Gravelit Meditation, sacrifice, get back Blood Trail Reclaimer, then play Blood Trail Reclaimer, you can rebuy Gravelit Meditation. And then you get a repeatable edict effect that also ensures that your 2/3 that if you don't sacrifice it to the meditation's ender trigger, either you have something else you sacrifice or you don't have to sacrifice anything at all, meditation can then just serve as a way to repeatedly ensure you are getting Blood Trail Reclaimer back over and over again, which is pretty nice. I know I've seen people talk about it. I know Stasis, I think, was the one who really put together that this is a solid synergy package. So certainly something worth trying out, exploring, I think. Dawnheart Familiar. I mentioned earlier, 5 mana for a green creature that draws a card is just awkward. This one requires you to jump through hoops. It's a 4/5 with Trample, which is better than a 3/3, but eh. Dire Strain Imbuer, 4 mana 4/3 with Ward. Flips into a 5/4 with Hexproof on the Werewolf Transform clause. Foray into Stenzia, 2 and a green. You may behold a human to give your creatures vigilance until end of turn. Otherwise, they just get +1/+1 counters. For 3 mana, I don't think you care. Gitrog Spawn is 2 mana for a 1/1 with Death Touch. When it enters, you may discard a card to go find a basic land, put it into your hand, and then shuffle. So I have said it a lot that our best reanimation targets in the format are things that do self-discard. When you are not playing reanimation threats that self-discard, I think this could be one of the better ways to pitch them into your graveyard. 1/1 Death Touch does sit on the board pretty comfortably. There are not a lot of things that can attack into it safely, especially particularly on the ground. And being able to turn your reanimation target that's stuck in your hand into a land drop so that way you can keep making your way up to the reanimation spell is very nice. Harvest Warden is, I think, maybe the best of the auras that comes back from the graveyard, which is saying a lot because I do really like the Cackler. It is a 7 mana 5/8 with reach. You don't really play it for the front side. You play it because when you get into the graveyard for 1 and a green, it becomes landfall. If you have more lands than Enchanted Player, surveil 1 and gain 1 life. The if you have more lands than Enchanted Player is a very awkward thing in matchups where your opponent's just hitting a lot of land drops or even ramping, but you don't really want this in those matchups anyways. This is a sideboard tool that I think is very, very good if you are in a mana-heavy strategy with like graveyard themes, which I do think those could exist. Fashion Temples from Flesh is a Like the Fashion Temples and any of the Coalesce spells are spells that are very, very good when you are making a lot of mana to more reliably get them later on. So that would be a deck that would appreciate you having a lot of mana available and would appreciate you having graveyard synergies. This is something that could gain you a lot of life and surveil a lot of cards, potentially, over time. As I have talked myself around this, I have convinced myself that this is not better than Cackling Igniter, but I think it's probably like the second best of the batch. And I think it's a fair step below now that I've read it out more specifically. Hope's Trail Pilgrim is a 2-mana 1/3 that makes a treasure when it enters. It is another one of these creatures that almost perfectly pays out its mana that you spend on it when it comes into play, much like that 3-mana 2/2 from Solastere in red that makes 2 red mana. This one banks that mana, but if you can repeatedly loop this, that could be something. I don't think it matters, unfortunately. What you could do, is if you have 2 cost reducers for instants and sorceries, you blink Hope's Trail Pilgrim and something and a creature that rebuys an instant or sorcery from your graveyard, and you play that with like Brief Stop, and then that's infinite casts of Brief Stop. Don't do that. That's a terrible deck, but you could. Lumengraph Spider is 4 mana for a 2/5 with a pump ability. It doesn't really matter. Rabid Mauling is a bite spell for 3 mana. It doesn't really matter. It's Ambuscade. That's not really a pauper card. 2 and a green for a 3/2. Somberwald Boar mills you 3 cards when it enters. You can pay 5 mana and exile a land card from your graveyard to flip it into Malignant Swine, a 5/4 that rebuys a non-boar creature card from your graveyard to your hand. The activated ability to flip this is just so costly. What this reminds me of is the level up creatures and arrows in the Weft, where they're so close to being solid, but their first level up cost is just so much that it's hard to justify the base rate. Same problem with Somberwald Boar, I think. Speaker of Grindanu looks pretty good to me. 1 mana 1/2 enters when it enters, you surveil 2. If you have any graveyard synergies, that is very nice. Concord, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature target human you control for 2 and a green. That can be this. Only as a sorcery, and only if there are 4 more permanents you control. 4 more types among permanents you control. But if you have an artifact, an enchantment, a creature, and a land, which is not that impossible to bring together, this can just start buffing up your humans over time. For a cheap creature that engages in graveyard synergies, if you've got ways to engage in those graveyard synergies across artifacts and enchantments as well, that could be an incidental way to enable Speaker of Grindanu to both be an early game utility piece to fix your draws and filter your top decks, while also potentially getting stuff that wants to be in your graveyard into your graveyard. It can also just be something that you can pump mana into later into the game to start making it a very real body. And certainly it's the kind of body that your opponent would feel kind of bad about spending early removal on, because it's a 1 mana 1/2, where the bulk of its early value is gotten on enter. So not too shabby. Stewards of Ulvenwald is a 6 mana 6/5. You gain life equal to the greatest power among other creatures you control, which kind of stinks. And then it's an 8/7 with Vigilance when it flips for the Werewolf Claws, which usually doesn't matter. Moving on, Ulrich's Proclamation is a combat trick that doesn't really matter. Village Bruiser might matter. Vaguely. 2 mana 1/1 enters, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control. It flips on the Werewolf Claws into Moonrise Ripper, which puts a +1/+1 counter on another target wolf or werewolf you control whenever it attacks. That being another is, I think, what kills it for me, but if you could try and find a way to make wolves and werewolves work, this could be one of the better ones. Walled Shadow Ambusher is a 3 mana 3/2 with Flash. Enters with a +1/+1 counter on it if you control another savage creature. I don't think that matters. Watching the Trails might matter. 1 and a green for a sorcery that mills you for 4 cards and returns a permanent card from among them to your hand. If you have Concord active, 4 or more card types among permanents you control, you can make a weapon token as well and attach it to a creature you control, which is nice. Weapon tokens, good for enabling Concord later on in case your artifacts otherwise get picked off. If you have a treasure that's just sitting in play, Concord making you a weapon lets you more safely crack that treasure later on, or glyph, or chart, or whatever. Equipping the weapon immediately is very nice as well. I think it's a solid role player. I don't think it's going to be an all-star by any means, but it's fine. Wilder Hunt Companions, 5 mana 4/4 that makes a weapon and attaches it to a creature you control. It's just not going to be super relevant. No multicolor cards, no colorless cards. All we've got is Evolving Wilds. So that is it for Innistrad Witching Hour. We got through that in fast enough order that we have done that in 30 minutes. That might have been the fastest singular set, which I'm a little surprised by. I felt like that was going long, but I guess just not a ton of commons that are super relevant out of Innistrad. Which brings us... Oh, whoops, I did not mean to close that, but we're here. Brings us at last to our final new set for Pauper. And now I have to talk about my baby. I have to talk down about my baby. Valir the Banished Isle, for any possible people in the crowd who are not familiar, this is my set. I made this set, and I have to talk about my own cards, which is very awkward, because I made them. What do you mean I have to talk about them? But we're gonna do it. So, Blessed Proselytism, I don't think quite gets there. 2 tokens you usually want for 2 mana, not 3, but these are 2 1/2 tokens, not 1/1s. So maybe 3 mana is worth it. You're functionally getting 2/4 for 3 across 2 bodies. These are 1 power tokens that don't die to the 1 toughness wipes, which I think is maybe the most relevant thing about Blessed Proselytism. They make 2 Acolyte tokens with +2/+1 counters on them. Acolytes are 0/1 warlocks with pay 1, sacrifice, surveil 1. So not a ton going on in terms of like the most powerful creatures you've ever seen, certainly. But I think because they make 2 toughness creature tokens, that could be relevant enough for a tokens deck to be willing to give it a shot, because it is a way for you to put some tokens in play that don't just immediately crumple to like ranks unmade. Clash of Courage is 2 mana to pop an artifact, enchantment, or non-land token. It kills creature tokens, which is nice, but I don't think there are enough relevant creature tokens that you want to kill with this, so we move on. Congregation Minister is 2 mana for a 1/3 that makes an Acolyte token when it enters. 2 bodies for 2 mana is nice. This is a very different kind of 2 bodies for 2 mana than something like... reinforcements. This is not 2 1/1s for 2. This is a 1/3 and a 0/1 for 2. If you can find ways to buff up your creatures, this being a 1/3 is a lot nicer than it being a 1/1 with another 1/1, for that same reason of like does not die to the 1 toughness sweepers in the same fashion. But anthems in Pauper are not something we exactly are like flush with. Fell the Non-Believer is something that I think could see some play if you get enough of a density of Warlocks in your deck. Warlocks in white are kind of something only Valir has a density of by any measure, and not a ton of them by any means. But if you have a Warlock, it deals 4 damage to target attacking or blocking creature. If you have a Warlock, it has lifelink in addition to dealing the 4 to attacking and blocking creature. So it could be 2 mana, deal 4, gain 4 to a creature. Which is a really nice bit of stabilization against something like Mono Red. Now, the puzzle there is how do you reliably have Warlock in play for this to work, and why, like, that is the reason you would be playing this, is to make sure you get the lifelink, because otherwise I think you do just reach for Plasma Strike before you reach for this. I think, like, Congregation Minister is a fine enough Warlock, but I'm not 100% sure if that's enough to make Fell the Non-Believer work in Constructed, or in Pauper Eternal specifically. It might be worth trying, though. Midnight Warden is one of only a couple land cycling creatures. Actually, no, sorry. There is a land cycling cycle. This gets any basic land, but it cycles for 1 and a colored mana. This is not one of the reanimation targets you particularly care about. It's a 4/5 for 6. Sorry, 4/5 for 6 mana. That gains you 4 life when it enters, and it's a flyer. It's fine, but it's not going to be one of the reanimation targets you are super keen on, I think. Overseer's Shackles is a pacifism that you can have the creature get sacrificed, gain 2 life, and surveil 2. Not going to really get there. Preacher of Singularity is 3 mana for a 2/2 flyer with lifelink. You can anthem your creatures for 4 mana. Not going to get there, I don't think. Reclaimed Convert, 2 mana 2/1 with Vigilance and First Strike if you've cast a creature spell this turn. Not going to get there, I don't think. Renegade Banneret maybe gets there. Probably not. It's a 4 mana 3/2. When it enters, you get to rebuy a creature with power 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. I did talk up how good that effect could be when it's on a 1 mana instant speed adventure that you can spend black or green mana on, and it comes with a big ol' creature on the backside because it's an adventure spell. But when you're paying 4 mana for a 3/2 with that same effect, I don't think it is quite as good. Renegade's Intercession is a 1 mana put a counter on target creature effect, which is something that is not always that embarrassing for specifically experienced decks. And you can return a creature you control a creature you own to your hand as well. So this is something that kind of messes with Mesmage a little bit. Especially if the sacrifice outlets that they have in play are things that do so at sorcery speed. They activate Mesmage, take the thing. No, never mind. Priority passes around in such a way that they would get the thing and then attempt to sacrifice it, and they would get first priority to do so. It gets back the thing that they're trying to steal with Mesmage. Yeah, not super relevant in that regard, I don't think. This is something that you might want to play in these Flicker Bounce decks where you want things that pick up your creatures. This might be something that gets away with trying to be slotted in as a utility piece in the sideboard of Experience, where you can just protect one of your creatures while escalating another one to flipping for Experience purposes. So it might be worth trying. Sanctum Enforcer is a 4 mana 3/4 with Vigilance that gains you life when your creatures die. It's not going to see play. Stand as 1 is 2 mana for +1/+1 to your creatures for the turn, and your rebels get an additional +1 power. Not going to see play, I don't think. Sunset Sentries is a very real candidate for Pauper play. 3 mana for a 2/2 that costs 1 less to cast for each spell you've cast this turn. When it enters, you draw a card. Its floor is, of course, that it's a 3 mana 2/2 that draws a card, which is fine but not amazing. Its ceiling is 1 mana 2/2 draw a card if you cast 2 other spells in the turn. I have talked about the double spell deck potentially being a thing that you want to play. This is something I think you play in the deck that is so devoted to double spelling that you play the 0-cost spells. Because one of those 0-cost cards makes this a 2/2 for 2 that draws a card, which is much better. Also, not an embarrassing thing to blink. Aspiring Shaper is our first blue card in Valir. 3 and a 2/3. You can pay 1, tap, and draw a card, then discard a card. You can pay 7 and tap to just fully draw 2 cards. That is a lot of mana. I don't think you're going to be getting to that second activated ability just about ever in Pauper Eternal, unfortunately, so I don't think it matters too much. Attuned Rebuttal, I think, is one of the most important Valir cards for Pauper Eternal. It is, I am going to just say it is our best Essence Scatter in Pauper Eternal now. We have an Essence Scatter that is also Graveyard Hate in Losei's Determination. It exiles the spell that you're countering. It also hits Invoke spells, or rather spells with Invoke. The DFCs from Gutalia that become auras that enchant totems. So Losei's Determination isn't awful by any means in comparison to Attuned Rebuttal, but the fact that this is early game just counters a creature, later on counters anything is very nice. Especially for 1 and a blue. Beneath the Tide is yet another Tuck effect. This one has basic land cycling, which makes it, I think, one of the better Tuck effects because it's just got a really decent floor of helping you hit your land drops. And it's at instant speed where some of the ones that we've passed by have been sorceries. It's not the best Tuck effect in the format by any means. That honor goes to Exalted Twiltree, whose Tuck spell is 2 mana. Good lord. But I think it's fine. Covet is, I think, one of the other important blue cards in Valir. 3 mana for a sorcery to draw 2 cards, but you spectacle it for 1 and a blue. I think this is the thing keeping the sneak draw 2 from Kitsuo from being one of the things Tempo wants to reach for, because that is sort of tempo negative, and this is tempo positive. If you have a 1 mana flyer, it gets in for 1 damage turn 2. This is immediately draw 2 for 2. The frequency with which in a tempo deck this just gets to be chart a course, I think is really high. I think this is one of the things that really helps tempo keep the engine rolling, and I think if blue tempo gets to exist in Pauper Eternal, I think Covet is going to be a factor in making that come together. Enigmatic Apothecary is 2 mana for a 1/3 that mills 2 cards when it enters, and as long as you're ancient, it is a 4/4. This is something that could make the like blue-black graveyard decks, because those decks are looking to fill up their graveyards for cheap early threats that just become much more relevant bodies. Look no further than Maven of Fear, which has a much easier graveyard condition for sure. Maven of Fear, 2 mana, 2/1, mills 2 when it enters as well. So both of these mill 2 on enter. This gets +2/+1 and Menace as long as 6 or more cards are in your graveyard, so not even Threshold. 4/2 with Menace is very nice, but it does still die to quite a lot in the format. 6 or more cards in your graveyard is a lot easier than having, a bunch of lands in your graveyard with Ancient. But we have New Divide, which does accelerate the progress to Ancient because it is a basic fetch that can come in untapped, so it never hinders your mana development, never is a tapped land when you don't want it to be. I think Enigmatic Apothecary could absolutely get there as a Graveyard Matters aggro threat. Or aggro or mid-range or whatever it ends up being. Heist Lookout is a 3 mana 3/2 that taps and stuns a creature you don't control. It's solid stats for the effect, as opposed to Frostlinks, I believe it is. I was thinking about it earlier and couldn't remember the name. I believe Frostlinks. It's a 3/2 Frostlinks, which is nice. But I don't think that's enough for Pauper play. Intangibility is one that I'm proud of, and I don't think it matters. It strips abilities from a creature, makes it a 1/1 that can't block and can't be blocked. Which means that this fully removes a creature from ever being able to block what you're doing, but does leave it able to clock you for 1 over and over, and if that creature ever ends up with stat buffs, then you have just given your opponent a threat that is unblockable, which is awkward. But it is designed that way because you could also throw it on one of your own things that has a bunch of stat buffs and make stat buffs and make it an unblockable threat. It's a weird give and take. It's a spell that I deliberately tried to add this weird tension to. I'm proud of it. I don't think it matters for Pauper. Samari Pilferer might matter, though. 1 mana, 1/1 flash flyer. When it enters, you tap a non-land permanent. If you want. It's up to 1. I think this could be fine. It's one of the better tempo 1-drops, I think. So, yeah. Thumbs up. Setral Sentry is 5 mana for a 3/3 that rebuys a non-creature non-land card from your graveyard to your hand. It's got flying. It's fine. It's whatever. We move on. 5 mana is a lot for this, but we only have so many. I think the only one we have at 4 mana... Sorry, we have 2 at 4 mana. One of them is a 2/1 that gets you a treasure if the spell's mana value is 4 or greater. The other one's a 3/3. But those both get instants or sorceries. This can get enchantments back, which is nice. So, yeah. It does the Gravelet meditation loops. So that's a thing. Shaper's Rites is another hexproof trick. It is worse than Shroud and Stars. Shroud and Stars is the hexproof trick you want to reach for if you're in blue. It is deliberately worse than Shroud and Stars. It's Shroud and Stars, but it cares about druids. This does not care about druids. Don't play Shaper's Rites. I would love for you to play my cards, but don't play Shaper's Rites, at least until you want a 5th copy of Shroud and Stars. And even then, unless you've got a bunch of druids, it's not the same. Slip Through the Streets is an unblockable trick that is a cantrip. It's a sorcery that lets your creature be unblockable. I kind of like it. I don't know if it's going to matter too much, though. Subtle Touch is probably one of the best Kindred payoffs in Valir at common. If you have a rogue, this gets to bounce both a creature and a non-creature non-land permanent for 2 mana instant speed. And I will say, especially below mana value 3, we have some rogues, Actually, let's look at specifically mana value 1 rogues, so we can curve this out on turn 2 potentially if needed. Relevant is Samari Pilferer, Runeclad Sneak, Covetous Neonate is a rogue. Yeah, those are the mana value 1 rogues that especially matter. At mana value 2, we talked about Code Path Runner. That does really like Nemologist. Not sure if that's something you'd want to play alongside Subtle Touch necessarily, but what you can do is you could have Subtle Touch bounce your own Nemologist and bounce an opponent's subroutine token, which is pretty funny. Karaz Nullblade, I mentioned, is a rogue. That would be a reason to care about Karaz Nullblade. Odunos Smuggler is a very real card I have played in Pauper Eternal before for a Graveyard Matters strategy. Dawnveil Infiltrator is a rogue and is a very good double spell payoff. Yeah, so there's some cheap rogues that you could play with Subtle Touch, certainly. I think this is one of the biggest incentives to care about a specific creature type, possibly in the format, just because the potential for this to be a 2-for-1 is so good for tempo. It's just the puzzle of how reliable is this going to be online. The Kuro Pathmaker is our last blue card. It's another unsummon effect. This time it is a sorcery speed 1. 5 mana for a 3/2 human rogue, spectacles for 2 and a blue, and returns up to 1 target creature to its owner's hand when it enters. It's fine. Beyond the Shroud moves us into black. This is one of, I think, the more important removal spells in the format in black now, because it is any creature with mana value 2 or less gets exiled, or if you sacrifice a creature as an additional cost, it just exiles any creature whatsoever. The Planeswalker part, of course, as always, does not matter in Pauper, but I think this is just going to be one of our best removal spells in black. Sorcery speed does kind of sting, but like, it takes care of just about any problem, no matter what, and no graveyard value whatsoever to be given to the opponent. Crypt Caretaker is 4 mana for a 2/3 that makes an acolyte when it enters. Whenever another creature you control dies, you put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. It's just too much mana. Disciple of Sorolla is 3 mana for a 2/3 that makes an acolyte. You can pay a black and sacrifice another creature to give it +2 power until end of turn. Also, just a little bit too much mana investment required. Elite Aspirants is a 2 mana 2 that makes a treasure when it dies. We have too many of those at 1 mana in red. This does not quite justify playing black versions of this effect, because this is just 2 mana instead of 1. Eyes of the Overseer is one of our only Blood Artist effects that is cheap in this format, and unfortunately it only works once each turn. That was an intentional design choice in Valir, because Valir tried not to push too hard on the traditional machine gun your opponent down style of aristocrats. It tries to lean into more gradual sacrifice value, which a lot of our sacrifice tools in Pauper Eternal do skew that direction, which is nice. But Eyes of the Overseer certainly is a card that suffers for that, because it is far less impactful than it would be without that once each turn clause. Without that once each turn clause, this could not exist at 1 mana. Het's Call is the other new Unearth effect in black. It looks like it's not an Unearth effect. It's 3 double black for an instant. Return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It can't block this turn, but it costs 3 less if it targets a creature card with mana value 3 or less. So, naturally, that means that it's it's double black, which is the exact same casting cost as our other Unearth effect in the format. This one gets to be at instant speed as well. And it's also a cost-reducing mana value 4 or greater spell, which means it can get back Portal Guardian and trigger all of the other Portal Guardian style effects that are in play on your board, and it can do so at instant speed. Double black is definitely really awkward in a deck that's playing a red-green creature, but I don't know, it might be worth experimenting with in like a Jund Portal Guardian deck. Hymn of the Overseer is 1 and a black to rebuy a creature card and a Warlock card from your graveyard to your hand. If you have even just like a light density of Warlocks, this might get you a lot of value. But that is the like if you have enough density of Warlocks, and we've covered almost all of the Warlocks in the set. We've covered all but 1, I believe. So, yeah. It's Just Business is another enchantment that we have that lets you make your opponent discard a card. It's not the only one we have. In fact, if we just come in here, look for commons in Eternal, discard. There is also Maddening Maw. Maddening Maw gets to do so when it enters or is traversed, and you can traverse it by tapping creatures with total power 3 or more as a sorcery. So this can make your opponent discard 2 cards instead of 1. This can make you discard a card if you want to, get something from your hand into your bin in a deck that might care about that synergy. It's just business. Only ever makes your opponent discard a card. Can't do so on its way out the door. But can be sacrificed for 3 mana to make each opponent lose 2 life, and you make a treasure sort of bank some of that mana. I think in a deck that's looking to, play enchantments and blink enchantments, this might be like the density of these might be really nice to kind of just keep your opponent out of resources. For like a white-blue blink deck, or sorry, not white-blue, white-black blink deck, looking to blink these enchantments could be really nice. Shriek of the Shroud is probably the worst land cycler of the set in terms of pauper play. 6 mana, 4/3 flyer. When it enters, each opponent discards a card and loses 2 life. The 3 toughness stinks. Slinking Swiftblade is one of only 2 pursuit creatures at common. 3 mana, 3/2 with Menace. You can pursue it from your graveyard by sacrificing a non-land permanent, and you get a token copy of it. We do have one thing that copies tokens that kind of does the populate thing. Copy token. Hold on. I could have sworn it was an instant. Maybe it's a sorcery. It is a sorcery. Twin Call Chant. Can make a token that's a copy of target non-land token you control. So you could make a copy of the Swiftblade token, but I don't think that's super relevant. I do think the other pursuit card is worth at least experimenting with in a graveyard synergy deck. We will visit that in a moment, but Slinking Swiftblade, not so much. South Street Scoundrel is a 4 mana 2/3 with Death Touch that gets another +1/+1 it can distribute anywhere, and that is not a counter, it's a weapon. Don't think it matters, but it's not awful. Tragic Accident is an edict that is not super appealing for Pauper. It is really good against these decks that spam a lot of tokens because it specifically picks off a non-token creature. It's going to be one of the more relevant ones. And if you have a mercenary, it also makes a treasure in the process, but I don't think that is enough to justify running it. With Impunity might be one of our better hard removal spells. It is 4 mana for an instant that costs 2 less to cast if you sacrificed a permanent this turn, including New Divide, and it exiles target creature. Also, a mana value 4 or greater spell that cost reduces. I think this could be very, very nice. In red, we already hit something that is interesting for mono red in Disgruntled Crook. It's a 2 mana 2/2 that shocks your opponent when it enters. This is just a very solid, stable role player. I think I've already seen people playing it in their red decks, and for good reason. It bolts the opponent, or not bolts. It shocks the opponent while being a relevant body on the board after the fact, so it can continue to apply pressure or just be relevant in combat. Furious Resolve is a pump spell that gives it the creature you target and other rebels you control trample until end of turn. I don't think it matters too much. Impatient Bandit's 3 mana 4/3 with trample that can't block and can't attack alone. I don't think it matters. Impromptu Exit might matter a little bit, potentially, possibly. I don't know. So, it's 1 damage to each opponent and each creature and planeswalker they control. That's great. I've been talking about 1 toughness sweepers are really relevant. The problem is that people have been pretty consistently talking about the other thing that does this. Damage each. And that is Crimson Finale. It also does this, but it does it to damage to each player rather than just your opponents. So it also hits you for 1, which can be kind of not that great against aggro decks where this is going to be most relevant. However, the thing that makes Crimson Finale really nice is that it exiles the creatures that would die this way. The same cannot be said for Impromptu Exit. I think overall, if you are concerned about aggro, I like Impromptu Exit a lot more. If you're concerned about the potential graveyard value that your opponent might get from you sweeping their board, Crimson Finale is the way to lean. But I'll be honest, I do not like this dealing 1 damage to you. I like Impromptu Exit more in that regard. So I think overall, I am hoping people start moving away from Crimson Finale in favor of Impromptu Exit, because this just stings you, and I don't like it stinging you. Liberated Convert is a 2-mana 2/1 that gets +1/+1 until end of turn whenever you cast a creature spell. Can swing in for a decent amount. It's really the only red thing we've got that's super interesting for like the double spell archetype, because it could swing in as like a 4/3 each turn. But I don't think that is enough to make it super worthwhile, unfortunately. Patrol Veteran is 4 mana for a 3/4 that adds double red at your first main phase, but only for creature that can't be spent on non-creature spells, rather. This can jump you up to a 7-drop on turn 5, which if you go turn 2 Mana Dork, turn 3 Patrol Veteran, turn 4 cast a 7-drop could be very real. I think Patrol Veteran could be something that helps these big mana ramp decks that aren't looking to do the Monument Infinite stuff come together. Shroud Walker is 6 mana for a 5/4 with Trample and Haste, and basic land cycling for 1 and a red. The thing that makes this relevant for it being like the reanimation target you get into your graveyard is that it's a Trampler with Haste. So it does clock your opponent immediately, which is pretty nice. And 5 and a red is eminently castable overall, as far as these reanimation targets go. So maybe it sees play. Who knows? There are so many self-discarding reanimation targets, though, so it's got competition. Spice of Life is probably not going to see play. It is competition for the slot that Frag is in. It's trying to deal 4 damage to a creature for 2 mana. This has the upside of exiling the creature if it would die, so it can shut off graveyard's energies, shut off recursive loops. The problem is that this is only 2 mana if your opponent has lost life this turn. Otherwise, it is 3 mana, which is definitely worse than Frag. Also lacks the flexibility of Frag of getting to pop an artifact. I think the thing that hurts Spice of Life in Pauper especially is that the reliability with which you can trigger Spectacle gets hindered a lot by your opponent having a 4 toughness creature in play. So that might be the stinger for Spice of Life. We have Strangle in Pauper Eternal, courtesy of my set. 1 mana, deal 3 to a creature or planeswalker. Only creatures in this set, in this format, but we don't have lightning bolts. So you make do with what you got. And this does not require you to be on the specific timings as Plasma Strike. I think Strangle is going to show up a good bit. The biggest knock against it is just that it cannot go to the face. So it's not going to be an automatic 4 of in every single burn deck forever and ever. But that's fine. Let's encourage some non-aggro burn red decks, right? Streetwise Surveyor is 5 mana for a 3/3 that impulse draws a top card of your library, but if your opponent's lost life this turn, it costs 2 less. It's a spectacle card. I think it could be a reasonable spectacle card, but I don't expect it to be like the thing that shakes the format's foundations by any means. Sunset Recruit is fine. It's 1/1 for 1 with First Strike and Haste, which is a very nice pairing of abilities. 1 in red, tap, target creature with power 2 or less can't be blocked this turn. It's fine overall. I don't think it's too important. Teardown is 4 mana to deal 6 to a creature, and creature tokens can't block this turn. I don't think it matters too much, though it does really screw with download courier decks trying to come up the board with those tokens. Yoink is 1 in a red for a sorcery. Up to 1 target creature can't block this turn. Up to 1 target rogue you control gains menace until end of turn, and you may discard a card to have target player draw 2 cards. I don't think it matters all that much. It's a decent draw 2 discard 1 draw 2 card. The combat implications are kind of neat, but not ultimately that important at the end of the day. At least in Pauper. Defend the Groves is a fight spell that gets to put a counter on the creature you control if it's a druid. Not really a Pauper card. Dockside Hawker I have seen some speculation on, and I can kind of get it. 3 mana 1/3. When it enters, you make a weapon and may attach it to a creature you control. So it's a 2/4 in the baseline. It's a 3 mana 2/4. If it dies, that weapon sticks around. Can buff up one of your other creatures as well. Doesn't engage with +1/+1 counter synergies, but if there are equipment synergies running around, which we do have a couple, give me a moment. Let's hop over here. Whoops. Nope. Dockside Hawker. This is the tab I wanted to go back on. Minus type equipment, and with the Oracle text of equipped. The most important thing... Oh, nope, that is a lot of berry stuff. We're We're going to do Berry without the last letter. The most important benefits are like it makes Thalia skill better, which is not super important. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? There was a thing that cares about this. Skarny Raider. Skarny Raider is the reason that this might matter. Skarny Raider is a 2/2 for 2 from Awakening in Uldun. When it attacks, if it's equipped, you draw a card and you lose 1 life. Skarny Raider into Dockside Hawker means you are swinging a 3/3 that draws you a card and loses 1 life each time it attacks, and if that 3/3 dies, you still keep the weapon token, which can be pretty good. It is the only benefit to having an equipped creature in the format, unfortunately. Besides, I guess I have seen people play Dispose of, destroying a creature that isn't enchanted or equipped. Dockside Hawker can also protect a creature from Dispose of, but I think our removal has gotten so good that you should not really be reaching for Dispose of anymore. So if you're looking to make use of Skarny Raider, which is a very reasonably good card, this card can just do a lot of work. I could totally see Dockside Hawker being a meaningful synergy piece there. Overall, I think until we get more Equipment Matters tools at common, I'm not sure if this will matter too much in Pauper Eternal, but there is that synergy there, and it is just a reasonable enough stat line with some long-term value. Do Reward is 1 mana for an enchantment that mills 3 cards when it enters. You may return a creature or land card from among the milled cards to your hand. You can pay 2 and a green and sacrifice it to gain 3 life and create a treasure token. Meant to be a mirrored pair with It's Just Business. It's Just Business hits your opponent's hand and deals 2 to them when you sacrifice it while making a treasure. This gets something to your hand, gains you life when you sacrifice it and make a treasure token. Do Reward, I think, is something that could see some play alongside the green Ley Pillar as just more consistency with like digging and finding the relevant permanents. Sacrificing and gaining some life is a nice niche use in like the mid to late game. If you just like if you're desperate for some extra life gain. This also is something that can fix your mana if you're really struggling to hit your mana. This is something that like you could just bank the treasure token, and that gets you access to a color you might not otherwise have in your mana base right now. So not astonishing by any means. It's no A Journey Begins, but I do think it's not terrible. I think it could see some play here and there. Find Your Prey, not so much. It's a Mercenary Matters combat trick that gives something trample. Gutter Rat. It's not something I imagine we'll see play. We only have 2 Pursuit cards, like I mentioned, but it does get a Pursuit card from exile and put it into your graveyard, so you can pursue that card again. It's a 3/3 with trample for 3, otherwise I don't think it really matters. That Pursuit card that I think could be relevant is Hired Hand. Now, on its base rate, I don't think it's all that good. It's a 5 mana 4/5 with Vigilance. That's kind of just mediocre. When you pursue it, it's 3 and a green, 4 mana for a 4/5 with Vigilance. It's a token, which is a little awkward, but there is that token synergy from Blood Like Rivers that I mentioned. And just if you have some random trinket permanent in play that you can sacrifice, like an Omen of Slaughter, or It's Just Business, or any sort of thing along those lines, Hired Hand gets to be a 4/5 for 4 that just gets to keep clocking your opponent while still being a blocker, which is really nice. It's really bad into bounce effects from blue decks, but that is a small price to pay, I think. I think it's a very solid body overall. I think this is being slept on, because it's one of those cards I have not seen much conversation about, and I do see why it's getting kind of overlooked, but I do think there is some merit here. Leonin Revivalist is 2 mana for a 1/2 that gets a basic land card from your hand or graveyard to the battlefield tapped when it enters. It's fine. It's another one of these ways to accelerate in mana. It's debatably safer than a Mana Dork because it's not something that needs to sit in play to keep making its mana. You can just block with it and have it die after the fact. If the land is in your graveyard, it's pure value. If it's in your hand, then it is card disadvantage to get the ramp. I think it's fine though. I think it could see real play. Outskirts Steward. We finally got to the thing that matters for Portal Guardian. So let's get Portal Guardian pulled back up here. So I mentioned last time, Portal Guardian, 2 mana, 2/1, cares about 4+ mana spells. It gets +2 2 +1/+1 counters for each of those spells that gets cast. Outskirts Steward is a 1 mana for a 1/1 that gets a single counter whenever you cast a spell with mana value 4 or greater. These are both cheap scaling threats that get scarier and scarier as you play these big spells, and these big spells can be cheated out for less mana, and they make these threats better over time. Especially when we have things like Harness in Monsters of Shikyu, which taps down a creature and reduces the spell's cost by that creature's power. Harness has there's like 1 or 2 Harness cards that I could see being experimented with in this kind of a shell. We have the Cliques of Nylon 7 mana 5/5 green-blue hybrid creature that reduces its cost for each counter on a creature you control, which can work pretty nicely with these if these start to get rolling. We have some varying removal spells and other interactive pieces that get to cost reduce themselves. I think that there is something between Outskirts Steward and Portal Guardian, and if it doesn't quite come together in this current Pauper Eternal season, I do think that this is the backbone of a shell that could really emerge in the future. So keep your eyes on it. If it doesn't work this month, it might matter in the future. Pattern's Abundance is 3 mana for an instant that gets 2 basics, puts 1 into play tapped, the other goes to your graveyard. It accelerates your Ancient for the most part. It's not the best removal spell. Or sorry, not the best ramp spell. Reprinted out of Standard, or out of Official Magic, it is still in Standard to my recollection. Pick your poison, single green sorcery, to edict your opponent for an artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. The enchantment mode is a little rough just because, again, there are so many token enchantments that are going to be running around. Same with artifacts. It's the same tension that this has felt in Constructed in Revolution so far, which is just that there are so many tokens that really apply pressure to this being able to reliably pick stuff off. But I do think it could do some work overall, so we'll have to see if it really gets to land. Titanic Mycoid is a big ol' beater. Land cycles for 1 and a green. It's an 8/7 for 7 with trample. I think it could do some work in those Reanimator shells because it's an 8/7 with trample, and that's all I really have to say. Toxin Peddler is 2 mana for a 2/2 with Death Touch that gives a creature you control Death Touch until end of turn. Not relevant. Volwood Sentry, I have seen people chatter about. 4 mana for a 6/6 with Defender and Reach. As long as you're Ancient, it can attack as though it didn't have Defender. So a 4 mana 6/6 without Defender is pretty good. The drawback just kind of goes away as the game goes along, and until then, it's a 6/6 with Reach. That is a pain in the ass to deal with on board. We have talked a lot about how relevant toughness is for surviving removal in Pauper Eternal especially, and Volwood Sentry dodges a ton of removal. This is not something that red really reliably can get rid of, which means it just kind of stonewalls red if it can come into play. The 4 mana does make that an if, not a when. But yeah, I think Volwood Sentry is a very real Pauper card. Moving on to Hybrid. Blinded Arbiter is not something that really matters. It just jumps something besides itself when it attacks. Concord Alchemist is another one of these 2 mana 2/2s that surveils 2 on enter. This one's got Vigilance, which is nice. I don't think it matters, though. Encroaching Voidborn is kind of funky. It's 2 mana 1/3 with Menace. When it attacks, you may exile exactly 2 cards from your graveyard to give it +2/+0 until end of turn. So that's something that can happen. That could come together. I'm not too sure it's the best in Pauper, but 2 mana 3/3 with Menace is nice. You just kind of got to keep filling your graveyard. It is a shame that we do not really have Original Rivaling, where exiling that from your graveyard draws you a card. That would have been awesome, and I would have been feeling a lot better about Encroaching Voidborn. We don't have it, so I'm not feeling too confident. Fledgling Sycophant is probably the most important of these hybrid commons. It's a 1 mana 1/1 with Flyer. It's a flyer. It's got flying. When it dies, you make an Acolyte token, so it's another Aristocrat's piece, but it's an Aristocrat's piece with flying on the front side, so it can hit in for some damage before it dies. Or it could jump block a flyer from your opponent. Incursion Vanguard is potentially another important hybrid card. It's a 2 mana 1/1 that gets a +1/+1 counter whenever you cast a creature spell. The longer the game goes, the more this does threaten to just ramp up out of control. This is really dependent on you being very creature dense. The more instance sorceries, enchantments, and whatnot that you have, the worse this gets. So definitely does want to see you sort of hone in on just creature spells. But I think there are absolutely decks like in white or red or both that can get away with that restriction. Killer for Hire is pretty skippable. Makes a treasure token. It's a 4 mana 3/4. Timely Tavern Keep, also pretty skippable. 3 mana for a 2/2 and a 1/1 we've brushed past in the past. We can keep brushing past. Lucrative Larcenist I could see being potentially good. It's a 3 mana for a 2/3 with Spectacle for 1 and a blue-red hybrid, so 1 less mana to Spectacle it out. 2 mana 2/3, if you can get it in play, is really nice. When it enters, you may discard a card. If you do, draw a card. This is something that really benefits from the blue 1 mana flyers. Being able to get this into play on turn 2 is a very solid bit of tempo play, very solid stats for the cost. 2/3 is going to be kind of annoying for some of these cheaper aggressive decks, lower curve aggressive decks that might not be able to deal with a 2/3 on curve so reliably, and being able to filter out something you don't care about in your hand for something more relevant in matchups like tempo would be really nice. So I think for blue tempo in particular, this could be a real player. Shroud Scholar, not so much. 4 mana 2/2 flyer, that strategic plannings. Thoroughfare Busker, also probably not too relevant. 3 mana 3/2 that gets you red or green when you attack, and you get to keep that mana for the turn. Probably not too relevant. In colorless, nothing too big, I think. Autonomous Accomplice is pretty skippable. Bounty Wall might matter. This is a cannon card renamed. This is Prized Statue out of Cannon, which I believe has seen some experimental Pauper play in actual Pauper. 2 mana artifact. When it enters or is put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you create a treasure token. If we get enough artifact sacrifice tools, this could be really real. So I don't know if it's going to matter right now, but it could matter in the future. Disposable Dagger probably doesn't matter. Scrounging Censor probably does not matter. And then we get to the lands. The lands are the last thing that Valir has on offer. We have a land cycle that is very nice. It is one of the things that makes Valir so important for Pauper. But there are 2 other lands besides the duels. So the duels are the typed check lands from Duelists of Varro. Originally in Revolution through Duelists of Varro, they have the basic land types on them. They enter tapped unless you control a basic land of one of their relevant types. I deliberately put these at common, both for the set's limited environment and for Pauper. So I reached out to the curators ahead of this season and said, hey, do the curators want me to take these away from common, or are we willing to keep them at common and see what happens? And so far, the game is we're seeing how it plays out. We will see if the really good mana basis between Shocklands and Checklands and New Divide is something that causes problems for Pauper, or if it really improves deck diversity. I'm hopeful. I am hopeful that good mana in Pauper is a very good thing for Pauper, because last time around was so dominated by mono-colored decks. And we have seen people experimenting with 3-color decks this time around, where 3-color decks did exist last time around, but they were very few and far between, and their mana bases were really rough. I'm very optimistic about how well the checklands could play out, and certainly they're a very important facet of the format while they're here, for as long as they're here. However, they're not the only components. We also have Forgotten Foundations. Now, this is no New Divide. Certainly, I think you are very right to reach for all 4 copies of New Divide before you ever play Forgotten Foundation. For the most part, I think there's a very real asterisk to put there. The more concerned you are about aggro burning down your life and the more precious you are with your life total, the more that New Divide kind of just becomes Evolving Wilds with not much more going on. It's just an Evolving Wilds that enters tapped instead of getting the lands tapped. And at that point, Forgotten Foundation does get better, because it is the same equation, enters tapped instead of getting the land into play tapped once you sacrifice it, but Forgotten Foundation also surveils 1. There is a real tension behind Forgotten Foundation, where the nature of it is you get to take a peek at the top card of your library. If you like it, you do not need to crack your basic fetch on your upkeep before you draw. You can draw and then crack the basic fetch, because the land that this gets is put into play untapped. You don't have to feel the pressure to crack it first, or crack it as soon as possible, rather. And one of the other things that's really nice about Forgotten Foundation is just, like, if you've got graveyard synergies, this can put a top card of your library into your graveyard for those synergies. It is something I designed very intentionally to matter for Ancient, and as I mentioned, there are some Ancient cards in this set that could be pretty relevant for Pauper. Overall, I think certainly not one of the most important Pauper sets, but there are some real players. And that, at long last... Oh, there's also illicit marketplace. I don't think it matters. You can make treasures, but you have to pay 2, tap it, and tap an untapped creature you control. I don't think it matters. Anyways, that brings us to the end of the newest sets for Pauper Eternal. Like I mentioned, last time we did Pauper Eternal, Awakening in Old-Dune was the newest set. We have seen a full new standard cycle and then some since our last Pauper tournament. Cybros was the upcoming set last time we played Pauper, so much has changed in Pauper. There are so many new sets. Like Pauper Eternal is more than 50% larger than the last time we played it. If we had gotten 5 more sets before our next visit to Pauper, before this visit to Pauper Eternal, then Pauper would have doubled in size overall. So certainly the format has changed quite a bit. Yes, Diabolical Minion being banned was going to change the format one way or another, but I think even the best decks in the format last time either change a lot to look very different this time around, or there are just decks that could not have existed last time that get to exist this time and get to be real forces to be reckoned with. I know there have been some murmurs about just how ridiculous Nemologist has proven to be so far. I know people have been jamming League to varying results so far. I know there is a lot to think about, a lot that is cooking in the format. Just today... no one has made a deck list run yet today. But yesterday, during the stream, Dat Rubino got a 4-1 run with Black-White Blink. So certainly, like, there's a lot to like. There's a lot going on in the format. And I am very excited that there has been so much hype for Pauper Eternal. So... that brings us to the end of this set of streams. I can finally give my voice a rest. Before I go, I do want to just establish a basis on what to expect for the rest of this month. Unfortunately, I am leaning towards not recording my GP run. I am intending to play the GP, but I think I'm going to give myself the breather of kind of slowly creeping back into competing, and not putting the pressure on myself to have to make it a performance to play my matches. So if you were looking forward to a GP run, I am so sorry. Things might change between now and when the GP starts, but currently I'm not anticipating recording my GP run. I can't promise I will have it in me to do the decklist stream either. I would certainly like to try to do the decklist stream. I can say that much. My hope is to do the decklist stream when the tournament locks and the decklists are posted. But I can't make any promises on that front. The one thing I will promise you all is that we are going to get the announcement this month for the next set joining Revolution on September 1st. I will be making a set review video for that set, talking about how that's going to shake up the format in conjunction with the departure of Cliques of Nylon, which means we are going to be celebrating 2 years of me making videos for Revolution, which is a crazy fucking thing to think about, that the set review for the next set is 2 years of doing this. Good lord. Well, on that note, I'm looking forward to the set announcement. I'm looking forward to reviewing that set for you all, going back to something a little more structured, a little more scripted, and something that doesn't fall off the rails to be 3 hours of unscripted talk. Rather, it gets to be 3 hours of mostly scripted talk. Thank you all so much for tuning into these streams. It has been a blast covering all of the new commons. This didn't quite look how I intended it to look, but it was much better to make it happen than not make anything at all. And I'm certainly glad to have been here for all of it. And I'm so excited to dive into the Pauper GP this month. I hope you all take care. I will see you all in the Revolution chat. And if you are not frequenting the Revolution chat, I will see you all when it is time for the next set review. Bye-bye.